Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money, never, money, never, money, never, money, never, money, money. Now I know what you conniving, money, money, never, money, never, money, money, never, money, money. You can keep your conniving, money. When you've been a corrupt in a bill, tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full in a bill, tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money, never, money, never, money, money, never, money, money. Now I know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me want for. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. That's all the money that me want for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money. Now I know what you can have in money. Oh, Joseph.
The fire burning red in a Joshua representing of a Kams audio. Big up Kidaki, Buxton massive. Hey Babylon boy, you going like you like Kams son. Red. Kams audio son. You burn this wine when no want you shine. The tree of life, them no want you climb, cause them heart no kind. Kams, I say them heart not kind. Buxton Massive. Kidaki. Right. The fire burning red in a Georgia representing for Kams audience. Big up Kidaki. Buxton Massive. Hey Babylon boy, you go on like Kams son. Red. Kams audio son. You burn this wine when I want you shine. The tree of life, them I want you climb. Cause them heart not kind. Kams, I say them heart not kind. Buxton Massive. Kidaki. Right.
Never joke. Never joke. Never joke. Oh, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. Now know what you can even money, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. You can keep, you can even money. When you've been a corrupt bum, you have been tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, you have been tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me want for. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. That's all the money that me want for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money. Now know what you can even money. Oh, Joseph, for me.
Morning, neighbor, morning, neighbor, morning. I am morning. Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. It is now 7 hours 17 on the 22nd day of June. On the 22nd day of February in the year 2023. Yes, it's the day before Ghana's Republic anniversary. Yes, it's the day before Ghana's Republic anniversary. I hope you had a good yesterday. I hope many of you were able to reflect on some of the discourses we had with Dr. Beryllia Saskia Solomon yesterday. Some of you are now benefiting from the short replay. I hope you were able to achieve set goals. Have you rested and recuperated well this morning? Because there's a lot of fight that we have to fight, and I hope you are determined in your minds that you're going to fight those fights. There's a hint to Beniba Mekwashiba take notice. You're also saying I see him a daylight and look for him with lantern at night. In short, I am saying to you, you don't have to, you see other people's experiences. You don't have to go and get the same experiences or expose yourselves to the same things to get the same experiences. Right? Time has shown us, not only recently, but for quite a while now, that sometimes we tell ourselves that we can be individualistic and survive. We can go out there and try to do things to serve our own self-interest alone. But then it turns back to haunt us. No man is an island. We need each other. The African saying is that it takes a village. Some of you might have learned that from yesterday's interview with Dr. Solomon. I hope you have learned it. Right? I look forward to you continue to join the fight. I look forward to you supporting the fight. I understand the young men from Golden Grove are now out on bail, all 9 of them. Yes, I think 9 of them are out on bail. And the magistrate basically decided that they had to get bail because of the frivolous arguments that were being put forward by the prosecutors. So, because these men were arrested and charged because they were seen on video with sticks. Right? Just as I was seen 8 to 10 feet away from the protesters in the vicinity of GECOM and was arrested and charged. In this society, you have no freedom. You can't walk around with sticks or bags on your backs. You're going to get arrested and called terrorists. But there are videos out there showing that people from the Woodley Park community invaded the Woodley Park Secondary there, the school, the primary school, primary secondary school, right? And they were specific in beating up African Guyanese children. And on top of that, utter the words, this is a Kuli area, black man I get right here, right? If that is not terrorism, then I don't know what is. And since I have determined that based on the definitions of terrorism in this country and the actions of the authorities in labeling people terrorists, then those people in Woodley Park ought to be deemed terrorists. And they ought to be arrested and charged. They were not only seen with sticks, they inflicted bodily harm. There's evidence out there to show that they did that. Okay? So, quite frankly, I'm waiting. I've seen a statement from the Ministry of Education, or a statement from DPI saying that the Ministry of Education said. And I'm sure most of you are waiting for actions in this matter. I do hope we get some action soon. I remind you also that early in July, I think. Why am I saying July? Early in February. The people at Hope Town had caused a lighter sports car a fire. I learned recently that it was a sports car. And I learned that resulted from aggravation. Because an underage driver, unlicensed underage driver, was speeding through the community, struck down 2 residents. Practically disappeared from the scene. In fact, no, was arrested and taken to the station. The father turned up, threatened to light Hope Town on fire, allegedly, and then went to the police station and said he was the one driving the vehicle. That was a perversion of the course of justice. I understand that the young man who was taken to the hospital has since been released. And the people of Hope Town are still waiting to hear what will be the outcome of that matter. I also read recently that someone from the community was collaborating with the father of this young man, and perhaps the police, was burnt. They didn't say if it was if the circumstances under which he was burnt are clear or not, but he was burnt and perhaps is currently hospitalized. I have with me Dr. Hines this morning. Dr. Hines, I am going to ask to give us a little history lesson first and foremost, because like I said yesterday, usually you hear that African Guyanese are always the aggressors in matters that result in race riots and segregation and all kinds of things. I also argue that in the 60s, from my understanding, it was the Indo-Guyanese, encouraged by the PPP, who created the situation which resulted in what many of us will call the riots or call the disturbances of the 60s. Are we seeing a repeat of that kind of provocation? Are we seeing a repeat of that kind of provocation? Those who do not know their history are failed to make the same mistakes. Dr. Hines, welcome to Guyanese Morning Time.
Good morning.
It's the day before Republic anniversary. Care to reflect a little on what Republic should mean to us and where we are from then to now?
Well, Republic was a final step to cut ties with the monarchy, to cut ties with England. We had been under the yoke of European domination from the 1600s right up until that point. We had gotten independence in 1966, but the Queen remained the head of state, and we were still in the Privy Council and so forth. So in 1970, we took the bold step to cut all final ties with Britain. It was a symbolic step, but it was pregnant with a lot of significance because at least at the legal and constitutional level, we could say free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. And so in that sense, republicanism was a positive move. Many at that time thought that it was a move by Burnham and his government to avoid international sanctions because now that we were a republic, Britain could not walk into our country as they feel like. They felt that Burnham was doing that as a means of ensuring that, for example, he doesn't have to face the Privy Council because as a republic, we now had our own court of appeal and so forth. Those things were never substantiated. They were conjectures and so forth. But in the final analysis, we had done something that many of our Caribbean sisters and brothers had not done. Up to this day, you know, it's only Dominica, Belize, Guyana, no Barbados that have cut ties. The rest of the Caribbean have been ambivalent about becoming a republic. So in that sense, yes. Did it change anything inside of Guyana? No, it didn't. It didn't change anything inside of Guyana. In fact, if republicanism means government by the people, because we were stripping ourselves of the monarchy, which was government by the sovereign, and the queen was the sovereign or the king. And we no longer have a sovereign, and we have we are supposed to be ruled by the people, because that's what republicanism means. But we've seen our leaders, elected and unelected, behaving like the monarch, in fact, worse than the monarch. So in that sense, in a real political way, nothing much has changed in Guyana, and we are still to live out the creed of republicanism. Well, they are experiencing what we are experiencing in Guyana in one form or the other, if without being a republic. Republicanism doesn't stop, let me put it this way. Not being a republic has not stopped authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is the rule in the Caribbean. It is just that some countries, it's worse than others. So it's a matter of degree. So I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that they should not become republics because we're going to have, that is going to lead to authoritarianism. No, republicanism doesn't lead to authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is embedded in the political culture that we inherited from the colonial masters. And because we have never, in any serious way, divorced ourselves at the level of political culture from the colonial era, we still, at the level of culture, show signs of the authoritarian rule. There is a school of thought that argues that independence was paper independence. That was an argument by radicals in the early years of independence, that all we had was paper and flag. So we had a flag, we had a constitution, and that was all independence was. And, you know, the argument, the debate in the early years of independence, should we move beyond paper independence and flag independence to a real substantive independence, where we transform the society and free the society from all the colonial vestiges. I would say that, 50 odd years after independence and republicanism, we still have not at the level of political behavior, political culture. We have not shaken off the yoke of colonialism. And this goes for every Caribbean country, some more than some. Kidaki, that's a very sore point. And it's not something that you just put at the doorstep of the PPP. Just the other day, we had a coalition government of which the WPA was a part. And Walter Rodney's photograph was removed from the National Archive. The government behaved in a callous way as it related to the Walter Rodney inquiry. And so we have had the bad-mindedness, not a political culture. Whether it's the PNC or the PPP, whenever they've been in office, they've behaved spiteful against the other side. And it's just part of the dirty, stink political culture that we have.
Thank you for that clarification. An indictment on both sides. Now let's talk.
An indictment, not an indictment of all, because it may not just be those two extreme sides. There may be some in the middle who will behave like that.
Thank you for that.
Some who call themselves, some who call themselves civil society.
Very well. And I did make reference in my opening remarks about the disturbances of the 60s and the different sides of the argument as to who started it and what started it and so on. I'm thinking I learned that it was the discovery of the murder of a husband and wife in one of the backlands and so on that resulted in the straw that broke the camel's back, if I call it that. Recently,
no, that was late. GUYANESE, I think, was done the most authoritative study of that period in a seminal work. No Guilty Race, argues that at different points in our history, both ethnic groups have been guilty of aggression against the other. And so therefore, he coined the theory no guilty race. And in that book, he examined the 1960s riot, and he's the only one that starts the disturbances in 1961. Now, the PPP had won the election in 1961, and it engaged in some triumphalist behavior. It had a long march, one starting at Springlands, what is now Corriverton, in the east, and one coming from the west, from the Essequibo coast, I think. And they marched through the villages on the coast to Georgetown. And on their way, there was evidence that marchers, PPP marchers, mostly Indian Guyanese, they spat and abuse Africans as they pass through the African villages. In our village, there was a family that was pro-PPP and had gone out to the public road to greet the marchers, and she was spat upon. Our relatives still live in the village there. But that was an extreme example that, of course, none of the marchers would know. They just assume you're passing through a black village and all these black people are not supporting the PPP. And they spat on her and others. And so that provocation, I think, set the stage for what followed. Remember, before the 1961 election, UC Guyana again, as a member of the African Society for Racial Equality, had come to the conclusion that neither Africans nor Indians wanted to be ruled by the other. And he came up with this novel idea that the way to solve that problem and to stave off imminent conflict and violence was joint premiership, where Dr. Jagan and Mr. Burnham would come together and govern the country together. Today we call it shared governance and power sharing. Both the PPP and the PNC rejected that offer. In fact, Guyana was expelled from the PNC for quote-unquote preaching race. And so the violence was simmering ever since the split in 1955. It was simmering. In ethnic societies, both groups are eyeing each other, and the question there is power. Is power. The PPP had won in 57, and again they won in 61. And they had about 42% of the votes, the PPP, the PNC had about 40%. But because of the first past the post system, the PPP was able to win more seats. And so, and then the triumphalist behavior of PPP supporters. So the thing was simmering. Guyana cited the death of a man named Felix Ross on the west coast of Demerara as the first political killing. Now, both the PPP and the PNC did not see that as a political killing. At the time, they thought it was just a random killing where Indians killed a black man. And, because you see, our major political parties, for the most part, tend to play dumb when it comes to race and racism. This is perhaps the most open the PNC has been about labeling things racism. From the other side, the PPP has been much more forthcoming when it comes to labeling alleged black attack and black racism. But the PNC has always waffled on the question of race. But that was the first killing Guyana argued of Felix Ross there on the West Coast. So if that you mean by the start of it, yes, that was the beginning of that phase. But note, I am not arguing about who started, because I think it's unfair to talk about who started. Once you begin to talk about who started and you say, well, it started in 61, somebody gonna come and say, no, black people had killed some man and so it started in 60 and so on. No, so I don't go down that road about who started, because you then get into that whole nonsense of arguing who started. The fact of the matter, the conditions for ethnic violence were created after the split, and it got to its lowest point in 1961 after the PPP won. There were fears that had the PPP taken Guyana to independence on its own, that black people would not fare well under a PPP regime after independence. And Guyana made that argument. And Guyana made a famous statement that Mr. Burnham's seat is reserved on a plane with Dr. Jagan. And he, Guyana, was reticent about going to independence under the PPP because he thought that there was enough evidence that black people would have a hard time under an independent Guyana under the PPP. The PPP itself wrote to the United Nations and argued that Indian people were in danger in Guyana. And in fact, Dr. Jagan hinted at Indian people living side by side, living separate from black people. Now, Guyana had come up with joint premiership with partition as a last resort. Peter de Gale had called for what he called ideological partition of Guyana. That is, that those who believe in capitalism should live by themselves, and those who believe in socialism should live by themselves. Guyana said partition as a last resort. Jagan hinted at partition because he feared independence under the PNC. So the history, the rhetoric of the history only cites Guyana partition as a last resort. But the YAR called for ideological partition, and Jagan supported racial partition. And so therefore, that whole period was pregnant with ethnic suspicions. And the leaders did nothing about it. If Mr. Burnham and Dr. Jagan had agreed to join premiership before the 1961 election, our history may have been different. Later on, when the violence got out of hand, Jagan would then offer Burnham a power-sharing government, offer Burnham half the government, offer Burnham the Home Affairs Ministry and other key ministries. But he only did that when he realized power was slipping away from him because the British had changed the system from first past the post to PR. And with PR, the PPP was vulnerable. And so they lost the 1964 election that we know. But when Jagan noticed that, that's when he embraced Guyana's proposal. By that time, Burnham was assured of power. With a change in the system, he could get into a coalition with de Gale. And so he rejected Jagan's proposal. So my point is that the inaction of the leaders in the face of all the signs that our society would have degenerated into ethnic conflict is what I think facilitated that 1964 conflict. Yes, in 1961, one can argue, as Guyana's argued, that Indians were the aggressors. In 1962 and 1963, when the arena of the conflict moved to the urban areas, Africans and the Portuguese, because the Portuguese did play a role in that conflict. The UTAM of the UF, led by I think Kit Nascimento, I think was the head of the UTAM. You know, he's the nephew of Peter de Gale. I think he was the head of the UTAM at the moment. At that time, I am not sure, but certainly he was a member. But they had a UTAM, they called themselves Guys. I think the Guyana Youth something. But they were part of the ethnic violence in Georgetown. So one can argue that in 1962 and 1963, the aggressors were Africans and to a lesser extent, the small Portuguese community. And in 1964, after PR came into being, Jagan then called on Indians to retaliate, and they retaliated. So when you talked about the two people in the back dam there in Buxton, that happened in 1964. up until that time, Buxton had not been part of the conflict. It is not that Buxtonians did not want to be part, but Guyana was able to talk the young people in the village against, getting into conflict with neighboring Indian villages. But when those two people, the Seawees, were shot at the backland, that is when Buxton became part of the ethnic conflict. But that was the 4th year of the conflict. And like I said, in 1964, the Indians were the aggressors. 1962 and 63, the theater of the conflict was in the urban areas, blacks and urban blacks and some Portuguese youth, they were the aggressors. 1961, when the conflict was on the Quarantine and the west coast of Demerara, Africans were the aggressors. And so, hence the conclusion, no guilty race.
I'm being told here that the guys actually stood for Guyana United Youth Society. Guyana
There
United
you go.
Youth Society. And so
Yes,
I'm really happy for that lesson in history, because here we are again with the PPP in power. And we're seeing what I want to say are similarities. Following the 2020 elections, we saw the murder of the Henry Boys, we saw the attack on school buses, we saw the attack on the nurse, etc. In recent times, we have seen and we have heard of vehicles driving through black communities like Hope Town, vehicles being driven by Indian businessmen from Bushlat and so on, driving through the community and shooting, firing shots in the air and so on. Recently, I mentioned that motor vehicle accident where that vehicle was torched. And just last week, we learned that a group of residents from the Woodley Park community invaded a school there, attacked and assaulted African Guyanese students and said, this is a Koli people community, black man and get right say. Are we being set up for a repeat of the 60s?
Well, you are right. Look, under the PNC, they committed atrocities. The PNC engaged in authoritarian rule. But I would argue that they did not facilitate the kind of racial thing that we see whenever the PPP holds office. I think the PNC managed, when they were in government, they managed the race problem better, insofar as you could manage it, because I don't think ethnic and race problems are easy to manage. But I would argue, and my disclaimer here is that I was opposed to the PPP and was a member of the WPA, and we fought against PNC excesses. And so I'm saying that as a person who is not a PNC person, but looking back in history, comparatively speaking, I would think that the PNC did a better job at frustrating open ethnic conflict. The first Indian holidays weren't enacted by Jagan and the PPP. Those Indian holidays that we enjoy today, all were enacted by the PNC. The PNC always had a more diverse cabinet. They had more Indians in the cabinet than the PPP has had African people. And these were Indians who played prominent role, the Ramphals, the Shahabuddins, and so on, who were legal luminaries and foreign minister and so on, played very, very important roles. The point I'm making, while one can argue there was window dressing under the PNC as under the PPP, I think the PNC would have gone further than simple window dressing. I think there was a genuine move on the part of Burnham because people were close to it. And some people who were his critics would tell you that he was not racist. And so therefore, he handled the racial question much better than the PPP handled the racial question. I would make that argument. Some historians and political scientists will disagree with me. But I am saying so as a critic of Burnham, that I think he did a better job at managing that race question. Because the race and ethnic question are not easy to manage. Because in an ethnic society, once you take power of one race, the other race assumes that you are going to attack them. And so even before you do anything, they take up a defensive stance. And so therefore, you take something like national service, which was tried in Tanzania and other places, everywhere in the United States, there are forms of national service. When Burnham introduced it, the PPP and Indian leaders gave it a racial twist. They argued that it was a means of getting Indian women to go into these national service places to be abused by black people. No, that was pregnant with anti-black stereotypes. But I give that example to show that when you listen to our Indian Guyanese brothers and sisters, they're going to hate Burnham's guts. And they're going to tell you he was the most racist person on earth. And that is unfair to him. He may have been authoritarian, but not racist in my estimation. In my estimation, he did a better job at the racial question, than he was more realistic. One of my friends who was close, and all the persons now dead, who was close to Burnham, said they went to the Essequibo once, and Burnham was holding an outreach meeting, and the Indians came out and they welcomed him. And my friend turned to Burnham and said, "Chief, man, you went over these Indian people." And he said, Burnham turned to him and said, "I am not that foolish. These people here understand the logic of power." So he was not the type who didn't understand the racial dynamics. He understood it very well. And he did what he could have done within the confines of an authoritarian framework to quiet things. So that is why you never had any big racial confrontation under Burnham. There were flashes. Around the 1973 elections, there were flashes of racial confrontations. But the confrontations, for the most part, under Burnham, were confrontations of ideology. Those of us young people in the WPA who felt that Burnham had not gone far enough, that he did not want to transform the society away from colonial rule as he had promised, and that he was authoritarian in domestic politics, although he was very progressive on foreign policy. But he was, and so our opposition to Burnham was not on the question of race. Was not on the question of race. Although, like I said, there must have been racial excesses by the PNC, but there were no big racial confrontation during that period. The racial confrontation returned. I'm now coming to your question. I have to give that background. The racial confrontation returned when the PPP returned to power in 1992. By 1993, you had the Rosante confrontation, where Indian people are taking away lands from black people on the West Coast, and white had to get involved. And that was the first sign of the racial thing. The PPP were to, in the Foreign Service, strip the Foreign Service of all Africans. One lady, for example, an African woman, had an Indian last name, and she was spared, but all the rest of them were stripped. And so, as soon as the PPP came back to power, it began to engage in what some people called at the time ethnic cleansing. So it is no accident that today we are talking about an apartheid state, because they began to do that cleansing as soon as they came back to power. Now, many of us did not agree with that terminology in the early 90s, because we felt that as ethnic cleansing, as it was done in Kosovo and in Serbia there, we did not reach that level in Guyana. But certainly the signs of ethnic dominance was there. And so by the time we got to 1997, right, Mrs. Jagan, first of all, the PPP in a black-brown society, a society in which black-white conflict and distrust goes right back to slavery. After Dr. Jagan died, they forced Mrs. Jagan, a white American, to become president. No, that is recklessness. No, Mrs. Jagan, I'm told, did not want the position because she understood that given the nature of race in Guyana, black people were not going to be happy with it. But they forced that lady because the Indian men in the party could not agree among themselves as to who should lead. And so they pushed that lady, and that was bound to have a reaction by black people. And, you know, black people reacted to that imposition of a white leader, a white foreign leader on them. And so again, the PPP recklessly is setting the stage for ethnic conflict. So in January of 1998, we had Indians being beaten in Georgetown. But as Guyana pointed out in his book, The Morning After, he pointed out that while black people were beating Indians, black people were rescuing Indians. So here you have in Georgetown, black people are beating Indians, but black people are also rescuing Indians. And if you listen to the narrative by Ravi Dev and others who had an organization called GIFT, and they compiled an account of what happened in January of 1998. They omitted the many instances in which black people rescued Indians. The point I am making here is, yes, there have been conflicts but these conflicts, they have been fanned. So the PPP comes back to power in dubious means, of course, in 2020. And one would think they would have learned. They would have learned from what happened 57 to 64. They would have learned what happened from 92 to 2015, that you have to 2020, that you have to manage racial antagonism in the society. All governments. And the big question is whether one party government can manage the conflict. I don't think any one party can manage the conflict. And that is why I think the winner-take-all system is a failed system. Because, as I said, the PNC tried. They tried everything. But they couldn't manage the conflict. What they did, the PNC, was to, in a sense, put a damper on open conflict. But they couldn't solve the problem. The PNC, the PPP, on the other hand, could not even put a damper. They encouraged it by their open domination. You see, the politics of domination in an ethnic society. You are an ethnic party, and you want to dominate then who are you dominating? You are dominating the other ethnic group. You're not dominating your own people. You're not dominating your own people. At least we used to say back in the days that Burnham was not racial when it came to dealing with his opponents. We in the WPA took more blows than the PPP ever took. Perhaps because WPA had leading black people, black leaders like Guyana and Thomas and Dye and others, and you know, the PNC leaders may have felt that we were traitors. And so we were singled out for blows, except Guyana. Nobody never beat him. You know, I think there was always the view that Burnham gives strict instructions, don't touch the man. But the rest of us got the full weight, especially the black leaders. And so in that sense, under Burnham, it was equal opportunity. Under the PNC, the PPP, sorry, the victims of the aggression have been predominantly black people. And so they come back to power and they are setting the stage every single day at the level of economics, at the level of politics, at the level of policy, at the level of the use of the police and the army, at every level of governance. They are facilitating the return of ethnic conflict, most likely violent conflict. And as I sit here on the 22nd of February, 2023, I do not see how we can avoid in Guyana ethnic conflict. I think it's already there. It's simmering. We already have a Cold War, ethnic Cold War going on. And these things will just burst at the seams. How are you going to tell people on West Bobbies after what they saw at Woodley Park, after what they saw at Oaktown? How are you now going to push that genie back in the bottle? You were able to do it. The PNC leaders or a PNC leader was able to take those people off the streets after the Henry boys. I don't think they will be able to do it a second time. So I think ethnic conflict, violent conflict is inevitable in Guyana unless the PPP somersaults. And given the history of the PPP, 57 to 64, 92 to 2020, and more viciously from 2020 to now, I don't think they're about to turn back. I think it's in their political DNA. And I think there are elements in the PPP. I don't think the majority of PPP leaders are so inclined. But I think there are some elements in the PPP leadership that actually believe in the racial inferiority of Africans. You see, individuals have racial prejudices, and as I've always said, that is bad enough. But when you marry your racial prejudices to power, that's when it becomes racist. And I do believe that there are some leaders. I don't think it's the majority. I know PPP leaders, and it will be hard for you to convince me that Daniel Ramotar and Moses Nagamutu, when he was with them, he's not with them now. And Navin Chandapal, it's hard for you to convince me that those men are racist. No, they may believe in party domination, but they're not racist.
But most of those men are either sidelined or out of the PPP now.
But that's what I'm coming to. I think some of these younger politicians in the PPP who don't have any political upbringing, who don't have any political manners, who do not have any understanding of race, who do not have any understanding of Guyanese history. They're so totally ignorant about the sociology of the country that they are destroying the social fabric, largely based on ignorance. And I think it's in the context of that ignorance that some of them I think, are bordering on anti-black prejudice. And it then comes out in the politics. In a sense, they can't help themselves. I don't think that at one level, an orphanally understands the racial consequences of what he's doing. I think at one level he doesn't understand it. I mean, at the intellectual level, he doesn't understand it. I think at a base, as we would say, common level, he understands certain things. But at an intellectual level, I listen to him and I look at the way in which he's going. He has no understanding of ethnicity, of race, of Guyana. And so, therefore, the combination of ignorance, the penchant for domination, and a simplistic understanding of human instincts is what is driving the PPP. And that is bound to lead to ethnic conflict. Because African people, more than any other ethnic group in Guyana, have had to do battle with racism from the time we left Africa and brought here in the 1600s. We have had to deal, and so we have what all people say, a long nose for racism. When an African tell you these people are racist, believe them, because they have a better instinct, because they've been victims for so long. And so when people like myself and yourself and others are warning the PPP, stop. Part of it, they're making our job more difficult. They're saying we are encouraging. All of a sudden, talk show hosts are encouraging black people to make charges of racism. The assumption is that black people are stupid and ignorant. That's one. And the second assumption is that anti-racism springs from somebody telling you that people are being, what am I going to go to Woodley Park to tell those people, those black people? They're there. They're experiencing it. And so, therefore, I think ethnic conflict is inevitable unless the PPP turns back or we get rid of them at the next election. They cannot be trusted. They cannot be trusted with power in a society like Guyana on their own. They're too politically risky. I said the PNC did a better job. I'm not saying the PNC was faultless. They did a better job. I think the coalition still, when it comes to human rights and ethnic rights and so on, is the best government that we have had. What happened to the coalition is because the coalition did not understand the racial dynamics. They didn't. But they erred on the side of caution. A lot of these PPP guys don't understand the dynamics, but they're erring on the side of aggression. That's the difference between the coalition. I don't think that the coalition leaders really understand the ethnic dynamics, or else they would have done some things differently. But at least they erred on the side of non-aggression. The PPP guys are perhaps more ignorant about the racial dynamics than the coalition leaders. But they are marrying their ignorance to aggression. Hence the current situation that we have. So I think as far as ethnic conflict is concerned, it's bleak. It's bleak because I don't see the PPP turning back. I do not see the PPP turning back. And I don't know how long Africans are going to exercise self-restraint, and how long their leaders are going to be able to tell them, do not behave badly. You can't say it's the PNC doing these things. Look at Buxton. It was not the Buxton masses egged on by the PNC and the WPA. That's not what caused the thing in Buxton the other day. What caused the thing in Buxton the other day was the PPP's aggression to its own friends, its own black friends. That is what caused, and as I said, that thing could have spread to the rest of the village and the rest of the country. And they got off then. I don't know if that happens a second time. They're going to be able to contain it. You do not bring out all the force of the state on an ethnic group as they're doing to black people. You do not stain people with calling them terrorists in a society when they look across and they see that at Bath Settlement you beat Indian people, beat policemen and women, almost kill a policewoman, stone black children, and the coalition did not instruct the police to bring terrorist charge against them. The police did not react against them. But this PPP is ready. When black people are protesting, to bring down the state in a most vicious way against them. Different justice in a country where each group is measuring itself against the other group. I do not think it looks good. I have to invoke Prime Minister Keith Rowley. This is not going to end well.
In fact, I want to say we are already seeing, chinks in the armor, even in the African Guyanese communities. I mentioned that incident with the sports car striking down those two people being burnt. And then from reports, a villager assisting for the removal of the car and perhaps giving the police information and so on. It was reported in the news that that person was burnt. I'm not clear on which circumstances, but are there chinks in the armor?
Well, those things are beyond politicians, you know. And I cannot sit here and say I support violence, I support destruction of property. I can't sit here and say that. But I also cannot sit here and say that I can tell the people of Hopeton or Woodley Park or Number 5 or Den Amstel that they should not respond to the relentless racial and ethnic attacks on them at every level. So you're caught here as a so-called leader, not being able to, at a certain level, intervene. And that is why I always tell your viewers every week I come here, stop cussing black people and telling them that they're not going out and protest. Stop doing it. Stop doing it. What you are doing is that you are falling into the trap of believing that black people are not human beings. Because if you're human beings, you respond to blows. You defend yourself. But we want black people to work to our agenda. And I keep saying, yes, political parties have their agenda, but the human spirit works to its own agenda. And ultimately, the PPP is going to choke because they keep biting black people and they're going to bite too far. and the thing is going to explode. Now, when ethnic violence explodes, it ain't gonna stop, you know. You can't control that thing. Look all over the world. You cannot control it. And the PPP is playing the oil that they are drinking, that has gotten them drunk. They may not live politically. They may not live politically to enjoy that oil that they're drinking, because they're pushing the society towards disintegration.
Thank you again. It's 8 hours 15. I know you have another appointment. Do you have some more time, or you have to go?
I'll stay for a 5-10 minutes if I must.
Well, let me give you that 5-10 minutes to
one more. Hold on, one more. Keep a fire burning, George, representing for Kams Tv, son. Right.
Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money, never money, money, now know what you conniving money. Money, never money, money, you can keep your conniving money. When you've been a corrupt bum, you have been tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, you have been tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Neighbor joker, neighbor joker, neighbor joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A £2 note and a guild piece. A £2 note and a guild piece. A £2 note and a guild piece. That's all the money that me walk for. I said money, neighbor, money, money. Now I know what you can have in money. Oh, Joseph.
Morning, neighbor, morning. Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. It is now 7 hours 16. I'm your host, the BUXTONIAN Kidaki Amsterdam. Welcome to the program. Happy Republic anniversary to Guyana. Yes, it's Republic Day. How long a republic? What about? I don't know the maths good, you know. But it's 1970. It's about what, 52, 53 years there. About 23rd of February 1970. Y'all do the maths to me, man. Y'all know me, I lazy. I intellectually lazy. Welcome to the program. This morning we're going to be talking a lot of things. You know, as an independent nation, it's an achievement. As a Republican nation, it is expected to be more of an achievement because you have control of, you know, your own destiny, as we say. Boredom used to say we have a destiny to mold, a nation to mold, right? We see in this society every effort being made to erase the history of Forbes Burnham, the contributions of Forbes Burnham. Every effort is being made. Listen, it's a sickening thing. I woke up thinking how sickening it is and why it is our nation is in such a state that it is in, because the fact is, one would understand as we continuously talk about generational wealth, that when the foundations are laid by one generation and built upon by following generations, then you're likely to move ahead at a fast rate. You're likely to move ahead with strength. But in this society, we have a situation where the foundations which have been laid by previous generations, more particularly the PNC government, even in the trying, difficult times of the 70s and 80s, the foundations which were laid, the PPP believes that it is their sacred duty to destroy those foundations and start afresh. And so instead of moving forward, you keep moving backward for the same things all the time. There's so many examples in the recent past. I cannot stop lamenting the fact that a nation is celebrating, or a set of a group of people, a nation it should have been, is observing the 100th birth anniversary of one of its outstanding leaders, one who fought for independence and eventually moved us to Republican status, and one who laid the foundation for a lot of the development which we have seen over the years, despite that those years were challenging years. Guyana did not have access to the kind of resources it now has access to in those years. Yet over the period of the PNC Forbes-Burnham government, we saw manufacturing industry in Guyana doing fairly well. We saw cottage industry in Guyana doing fairly well. There was that sense of nationalism. People had national pride. We were leaders throughout the Caribbean when it came to education. But as is, we have lost all of those gains, quite frankly, simply because the tides have turned and we have a government which was in office previously for 23 plus years and now again for 2+ years, that behaves as though Guyana is wholly and solely theirs to own and control and shape. And so all of those gains we see have gone through the doors. President's College was left to become just an ordinary secondary school as far as I'm concerned. Right? The residents of Golden Grove have been complaining to me, saying that last Christmas, last year, December, was the only year in their living memory, perhaps, that President's College did not have meat and eggs to sell to the community, because the farm at President's College was left to deteriorate. I got complaints that moves are now afoot to lease out the lands to people from outside of the community who do not look like people in the community. The lands that are attached to President's College for their farms. That I'm still investigating. You see the National Congress of Women hosting a photographic exhibition to mark the 100th anniversary of the founding leader, the first executive president, and all else, Caribbean man of the century, all else that you could label Forbes-Burnham as. But the Ministry of Education has refused to grant permission for students, especially students of Queen's College, the alma mater of Forbes-Burnham, to attend and view the photographic exhibition as a way of widening their world vision, as a way of educating themselves on the role that, positive or negative, a former president has played in this country. If that is not petty, if that is not ethnic bias, if that is not political infantile behavior, I do not know what it is. And if there is any appropriate time to lament it, it is on this Republic morning. It is on this Republic morning. Parent Teachers Association, parents, fair-minded citizens, open-minded citizens, civil society, all have a responsibility to say to this sitting government that what you're doing cannot and will not be good for this nation. It cannot and it will not be good for this nation. Our children should be kept out of, at least the education should be kept out of this political lunacy. Children should be allowed to learn as much as they humanly can and let their education shape their outlook. But it would appear as though this government has no interest in our people being educated. Because like I usually say, and many philosophers have said, if you can keep them ignorant, you can control them. Good morning once more. Welcome to the Guyanese Morning Time. I did advertise, I did mention that we have a guest coming out of Barbados. And so I'm not going to stand too long between yourself, the guests, and the information which we are going to share, the discourses which might result from this interaction. I say might result because I'll be honest with you, I don't know where it's going. You know, there's some folks who like to send people a list of questions and so on, and so they can prepare for those questions. I like to shoot from the hip, I usually tell people. Right? It's where you get the truest responses out of the people you interact with. And I like it that way. There can be no wrong and right answers, quite frankly. They're just clear opinions to which individuals are entitled. Emmanuel, is it Beryllia? Emmanuel Beryllia, the host of Politically Incorrect out of Barbados. Welcome to the program. Welcome to Guyanese Morning Time on Kams TV.
Yes, well, greetings, welcome to everyone tuning in from wherever in Guyana, in Barbados, or across the region, or across the world. It's an honor to be here on this interesting platform, and Voice of the People. Thanks for having me, for sure.
Thank you. As a matter of fact, I am most grateful that you first hosted me. Just like you heard of me for the first time and you invited me, I recognized from that invite and that discourse that we had that you had the interest of what was happening in the Caribbean at heart. You were paying attention, let's say that. And so I thought, listen, we have this continuous discussion in Guyana about what one set of people are allegedly doing to another. And everybody is saying, provide the evidence, and this is not so, and it is false allegations and so on. And so I decided, you know what will serve the people of the Caribbean and Guyana in particular? Let's have, quote-unquote, an independent observer. Because as I say, I don't think you have a race in the horse in Guyana. A horse in the race in Guyana, but you certainly have been paying attention, right? And so I thought it was a great opportunity to have, as I said, an outsider look into Guyana and tell us what he sees. So that our viewers understand who you are, where you're coming from. By way of introduction, who is Emmanuel? Who is the host of Politically Incorrect?
Oh man, I never really gotten that question correct. I've been asked that several times. Who is Emmanuel? Emmanuel is a lot of things. What I will say first and foremost is a man seeking to be better today than I was yesterday. And in so doing, I look at my environment, I look at my situation, I look at myself more inwardly, and always seek to be more for the people. I think I've lived a life. As a matter of fact, I was 50 years old last year. And so I think I'm at a point where I'm mature enough to recognize that a lot of what I would have done younger was based on what I thought life was about. But as you grow, you kind of learn and realize that giving back, trying to help others, trying to help those around you as best as you can, it's a bit more rewarding and fulfilling. So as Emmanuel, I am always seeking to see how I can help and share my views and dialogue about ways to improve situations so that our children and our children's children may have a better chance and a better opportunity than perhaps we had. If we could teach them early a lot of what we had learned late in life, we may have a brighter future as a people. And as a people living better, perhaps the world will be better.
Quite a mouthful there. Quite
I know,
a
right?
mouthful. And indeed, based on what I've seen, you have been making the efforts to give back, to teach our youngsters early, as you said, what you might have learned late. You are a founding member and I think vice president of this particular organization in Barbados. Could you give us a background to that? Why did you see it as important to established this organization. What are some of the achievements over the years, and where you're at currently?
Well, BYAP stands for Barbados Youth Action Program. Actually, that's a program that started as an acronym, YAP program, coming out of North America. Some people may know, some people may not know. At the age of, I was 23 years old, I was sentenced to 33 years in prison. So I've done time in prison in North America. I was deported to Barbados back in 2005. When I came back to Barbados, recognized a lot of the social issues. My cousin also came back shortly after I did, and we created this youth program to basically educate young people about the dangers of making unwise decisions. We don't have troubled youth, you know. We have youth that are making unwise decisions. So the key was to at least give them knowledge of themselves, let them recognize that they do have value and can make better decisions rather than going on the road, the media and the propaganda on the radio, the music, that basically leads them in the wrong direction. Having started that, United States Embassy saw what we were doing. We've been to St. Kitts several times, intervened between the gangs there. Beautiful place, shout out to the whole St. Kitts SKB. We've been to St. Lucia and Castries, dealt with guys there as well. Been to Trinidad. And here in Barbados, we go into the schools and do a lot of social work. Last year before, fortunately, because of COVID and whatnot, we had a youth program as well, teaching renewable energy to young people in the agriculture sector, because agriculture is one of the most important things we could focus on now as a people. Not the only thing, but one of the most important things. So the idea is to empower young people and create them and teach them the opportunities that are coming in the world tomorrow. Education is a major role. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's the same in Guyana, but I don't think we're preparing our young people adequately for the opportunities that are coming. Here in Barbados, for example, our curriculum is pretty much based on the colonial structure, which mostly produce servants. Yes, there's some who excel and go beyond, but for the most part, most schools seem to be producing servants. We need to produce leaders at this point. So the youth program seeks to help young people empower themselves and have a value themselves, to see themselves doing greater things as they go forward, making better and more informed decisions, to be better people and citizens of the society. That's one of the main objectives. A better society for all.
How successful has this been? Has there been... okay, go ahead.
Yeah, how successful? the best way to put it is this. They had a task force on crime prevention in Barbados, and they brought in all the stakeholders and the folks that were involved. And at the end of that presentation, what they concluded was that BYAP is probably the only plausible solution. It's a non-traditional approach to deal with the issues that most Caribbean countries are pretty much facing with the challenges of young people, especially what we call the African children. It's not by chance that most of them find themselves get caught up in this system and the street life and whatnot, making unwise decisions. It's almost by social design. And if you step back far enough from it and you take a closer look, you can recognize that a lot of it is they're being directed in a certain way. So we as the adults, those who care, have to intervene in any way we can. I hear you said it before on one of your programs, it takes a village. And this is indeed a reality. It does take a village. And once we start to be our brother's keeper, not just in saying that, but in our actions and looking out for each other, we stand a better chance of going forward and healing and moving forward in terms of what we would have gone through, where we're currently at, and projections for us going forward. The program has been a success from the inception. I mean, like I said, we've been to several islands in the Caribbean. We have been invited back several times. As a matter of fact, we have been encouraged to stay and work. They say home drumbeat first, though. So, we've always returned to Barbados to kind of intervene and help the young people. But we do it best we can, and we have reached a lot of young people here in Barbados and across the region.
And so I gather there's a lot of collaboration between BYAP and the government?
Well, as best we can, perhaps being non-traditional, and also sometimes people have different views, but when they can, I suppose they do help in any way they can. But for the most part, the program is funded and pushed by those who see the greatness of it, usually people in the community and sometimes private sector in some degrees. Good,
great. Listen, you said something that piqued my interest. I mean, everything you said is interesting, but there are those things which I like to latch on to. And that is the problems among African youths are not coincidental. They're by design. What are some of the quote-unquote influences by design that you would have recognized, and where they have been leading our young people?
Oh man, I mean, I hate to even say it because, you know, someone who's interested in the industry as well, the music. I was always told that music is a message. You know, we think that music is simple, but no, music is a message. Just like you take a child to see, what do you call it, Kung Fu movie, you know, or Spider-Man movie. You take a child, when they come out the theater, they tend to want to mimic what they saw. But music has the same effect, except it is a bit more subtle because we tend to listen to music over and over and over and over and over again. We don't always watch the same movie repeatedly. But for the music aspect, a lot of the music that we hear right now promotes a certain mindset. Now, we could argue that the music reflects the culture, and to some degree it perhaps does. But the reality is there are individuals who deliberately push a type of music to influence the culture, to influence the society, to influence predominantly a particular set of youth. And if you look at it, you hear the music promoting disrespect towards women in most cases. You hear music promoting violence towards each other, especially young men that live and congregate in a certain form in the communities. You find that. You never hear music talk about kidnap a politician and hold him for ransom. You don't hear that. You don't hear songs about kidnap a tourist and hold him for ransom. You don't hear that. But you will hear a song that promotes, you know, shooting or killing a brother for stepping on your shoes, or for looking at you wrong, or for what they call disrespect. That word disrespect. So nobody now disrespect me. So, and the funny thing is, you ask 100 people what the word disrespect means, you will probably find 100 different definitions. When the word dis and respect, if you break it down, may not mean what we think it means.
Thank you. And so here you are, you're truly a Caribbean man, as I would say, because you've gone to, like you said with BIAP, you've gone to several islands to address young people and young people's issues. Your sterling work has been recognized. Right at home as perhaps the only viable solution to deal with the challenges of young people. You certainly have been looking into Guyana. What have you seen? First and foremost, what have you seen happening with our youths, our Guyanese youths? What have you been able to observe?
Well, I mean, by the way, shout out to the Mama and Glenina as well on the BIA initiatives. I mean, having gone to St. Kitts, like I said, St. Lucia, Trinidad, and even in my own personal travels, I don't see a difference. You say Guyana youths. The truth is, Guyana youths are the same as the youths all over the region. They're faced with the same challenges in most cases, and they're affected in the same ways. And I'm certain that most parents have the same issues that they're facing in St. Kitts and Barbados. You know, so once we start to look at it as a separate issue, like, oh, Guyana versus, you know, Trinidad issues or Barbados, so the demographics may be different to some degree, but I guarantee you the social ills are pretty much the same. So when I speak about youth in St. Kitts, for example, which St. Kitts at some point in time, a few years back, had the highest murder rate per capita in the world. St. Kitts, you would think that sounds crazy. No, it's not. Because again, our young people are being influenced by these external forces. And one of the primary causes for that as well is I don't want to say it that way, but I'll say it this way, impoverished mindset. Because economics makes a difference in how we function. You know, when you starve a people, when you create poverty, and again, poverty is created. That's not natural. Poverty is not natural. Every human being strive to be greater and do better and live. So when you see situations where there's poverty or poverty-stricken communities and societies, you got to look at what's the mechanism at play. Who's benefiting from this? I bet you the young men in Guyana are going to prison at alarming rates. I bet you the young men in Guyana are failing schools at alarming rates. And to the point where even young ladies are getting involved in certain behaviors. So what has caused this shift in the Caribbean? Like this major shift that it seems like our young people are being attacked. And of course, if you're a Christian in the church, you probably say the devil is busy. And it may be true. then we need to identify who this devil is and deal with it accordingly. Because Guyana, Barbados, Trinidad, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Dominica, no matter where we go in the world pretty much, but especially the region, all our youths, Jamaica is another testimony, all our youths are pretty much facing the same challenges. You know, the education system, that's a major factor. Because what they all have in common is school. Whether you come from an upscale or medium or what they call low income, we're going to touch that a little later. They all have one thing in common, that is the school environment. So what is it perhaps that the school is doing to benefit? And perhaps we need to look at what the school is also doing that isn't helping.
The school. The devil. Who's the devil?
Who is the devil?
Yeah, how do we
The adversary.
identify
The adversary.
devil in this scenario?
The adversary is the devil, man. The one who opposes. And it's funny because I'm glad you mentioned that, because we don't like to touch the religious aspect. And as a Rastafari, me personally, you know, and we speak about His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I and Empress Reserve, there's a lot of misconception, and that's done deliberately. But when we talk about religion as a people, you know, and God and the devil, you know, you always look through, you Google it, you find the devil, they tend to show you images that are dark or what they call, you know, dark skin or whatever, because they try to portray the devil as black. And of course, God and Jesus as white and pure. Unfortunately, when we say the word devil, if you look at the word devil, what it really means, it just means adversary, one who opposes. So anybody who opposes you, in a sense, can be a devil. So as a people who have gone through what they call the enslavement period, the kidnapping, the abuse, all the different things, and we are in 2023 as a people, and we are still struggling for our self-identity and to move our life forward in a positive and more meaningful way, especially for those Christian brothers and sisters, in a Christ-like way. When you see people in the society who deliberately put stumbling blocks in your way, you have two ways of looking at it. You can look at the negative aspect and blame a system. Oh man, the government doing this and the people them doing this and that, and it's the devil's fault. But when stuff start to go good for you, you say, oh God, thank you very much. Hallelujah. Praise Jesus. But the reality is, things are not happening to us as a people. Things are happening for us as a people. And I say that to say that if we start to recognize that we have a divine right to be here, regardless of what your religious belief is and persuasion, to be better than you found your situation, you look at every situation in two ways. You could blame the devil or you could blame God. But after you finish with the blame, we still got to take responsibility for ourselves as a people, stop the blaming, pick ourselves up, brush off, and move forward. But in order to move forward, you got to be able to identify and be truthful to yourself. What are some of these stumbling blocks that are placed in your way? Because once you recognize the stumbling blocks, or the blocks I should say, and you can use those blocks to either build your new kingdom or use those blocks as stepping stones to get over the situation rather than looking at them as obstacles. So when you ask the question, who is the devil? Believe it or not, we have the ability to perceive the good in a situation and to perceive the bad in a situation. So based on where we are consciously, mentally, spiritually, and I guess I could say religiously, we determine by our own actions who is the God and who is the devil. I can't point and say, well, look, the devil is there or the devil is here. Your perception of what it is, how you rise above it, or how you allow it to overcome you, determines which is which. And that's just my own view. I don't know if that resonates with other people, but you could tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, you know, certainly I usually say the devil and God and so on is present among us, but in human form. Right? Like you say, the good Christians say, well, the devil is at work and so on, and thank God and things. But the reality is, it is people. It is people who dwell among us, who move among us, that perpetrate, quote unquote, wickedness, that puts us in the situations that we are as humankind. Right? And so until we can address those, we're not likely to right the wrongs. You said the adversary. In our society in Guyana, and perhaps in the Caribbean, the adversary is always seen as the opposite to any political party, any political system. In Guyana, the adversary of the opposition is seen as the PPP administration. The PPP administration certainly sees the opposition and anybody who it believes is supportive of them as adversarial. And so we have a situation where it would seem as though there is no fairness in the land. There is no growth in the land. Development and resources are not distributed fairly, equally in the land. I know you reached out to me about talking about what is Guyana based on that image, that one image, let me call it that, of what a low-income home looks like in Guyana, as I would say, for one group of people, as against images that we hear of seen as low-income homes for another group of people. When you're looking from the outside and you see these images, what are your thoughts? What are your conclusions?
Well, that's a powerful question. My thoughts. You sure you any words of our pride?
I like the truth. I can handle the truth.
You sure you want me to answer that?
Yes, I'm absolutely sure I want you to answer that.
Well, first of all, let me say, big up to Demerara. I definitely got to shout out Demerara for personal reasons as well. When I saw what was going on in Mocha, let me start there. That's what really drew my attention to the situation in Guyana. I've always seen Guyana. I've had people, a lot of folks I know in Guyana, a lot of people I affiliate with here in Guyana, are from Guyana, sorry. And so I've always had big respect for Guyana. I mean, maximum respect. I don't draw a racial line and say, well, Indian or black. I don't get into that. I mean, we want people as a people. We want people. So I look at it as a whole. So I was already excited to hear about the, oil in Guyana, things improving. Very excited to hear about that. The people going to benefit. And so that's where it started. And then to see sometime later what happened in Mocha, where I saw an excavator, a large one, by the way, drifting through a village, what appears to be a community, and demolishing homes in some instances where there were people in it looking to really escape. And I thought to myself, wait, what year is this? This cannot be real. This can't be real. So I share that as wide as I can to bring attention to it for the fact that, look, what happens in one Caribbean country affects all of us. I'm not looking at it and thinking, oh, that's a Guyanese issue, I couldn't care less. Looking at that send chills through me. And if I could have hopped on a plane and come to Guyana at the same time, I would have definitely done so. Now, to do what? Maybe that's another conversation. But what really riveted me was to think that, well, how is it possible in a country that's now so enriched, which has always been enriched by its natural resources, at this stage, having these kind of issues? So when I look into it a little more and more, I start to realize, okay, I'm recognizing there's a difference, or what appears to be a difference. Let me say that from this viewpoint, between how certain sectors of society are being treated. Because the individuals that were there putting in this same work look like the people who was trying to flee and run across that, what looks like a bridge, which looks like a 2x12 plank, as far as I'm concerned, trying to move a fridge. And I'm thinking, how is it possible? So is Guyana now a neo-colony? Because it looks like oppression being put against their own people. So I had an issue with that. Then I saw a news reel where they talked about rebuilding homes for quote unquote lower income families. And again, I'm thinking, lower income Guyana rich. We should have no lower income. Look at a place like Dubai that boasts about when they discover oil, how they enrich their country and the people of their nation. I'm not saying that everyone in Dubai is living above standard. I'm simply saying they enrich the country and enrich the people. Now, I'm sure there may be a side of it that we don't see. But you would think that in the Caribbean, we would learn from all these examples of all the different countries who went ahead and did certain things and fell as a result not doing it correctly. Look at your neighbor, Venezuela. That is rich in oil, but now nobody can't buy the oil because of sanctions and other stuff. The point is, it's a complete mess. I think they say it's second to only Haiti, which is another conversation. But looking and recognizing these metal houses, because I design and build houses. So I looked at this and I said, wait a minute, that's aluminum sided. No matter what you call it, and you plaster it, and that's not concrete, by the way, on the side. That's mortar. That's not concrete. There's a difference. You're putting mortar on top of steel, retaining heat. You're going to put people to live inside there. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, man, that's just, I mean, it's okay to build a modest looking home. Tell me you're building a modest home, but a lower income home with a mindset of building these what appear to be nothing but aluminum and mortar stock homes. My thing is, man, something ain't right. Something ain't right. Maybe the minister is misinformed. Maybe he's not aware of the long-term effects that might have on people in terms of heat affecting your body, heat affecting your furniture, and dry rotting your clothes, dry rotting your shoes, your books. I mean, you look at those old Western movies and you would see the old prisons and the prisoner, they put him in a sweat house, they call it. It was always a galvanized looking house outside in the sun that retained heat, because when you put him in that condition, it's supposed to oppress and make it uncomfortable. How can a family striving to grow live in those conditions? I have a farm. I love farming. One of the things I know about farming is that if you want to stop a plant from growing, you keep it in a small pot. So once you keep it in a small pot, you restrict the room the roots have in order to expand, unless it's a tree that is so mighty and so great with such a force that it breaks free from the mold that it's in. The only challenge is that may take longer than necessary. And when you put a family of individuals in these small homes who may not have that kind of mental fortitude to overcome the psychological effects of being in the condition, then what you create eventually is a state of mind of dependency. So then when you break people in that way, then they tend to repeat that for generations to come. And you stagnate the growth of a people, you stagnate the growth of a nation, and in essence, you keep the gap widening between those who have and those who have little or nothing. So I took issue with that. And outside looking in, I felt that maybe we could try to bring some attention again, maybe for the minister, if he's watching, to reconsider building those type of homes if he's truly interested in helping people, because help is supposed to be sincere for the greater good. So it's like saying, well, a man is hungry, so I'm going to help him by giving him some stale food. At least he has food. Well, if that's all that's available, we can research that. But if you can do better, you're supposed to be able to do better in situations where you can. So I think that the minister needs to relook that idea, maybe sit with the people in the community he's trying to provide housing for, and ask them what would they like, what would be better suited for them, as opposed to what you want or what some contractor who's looking for a business deal wants for the people.
I'm not asleep. I'm just allowing that to what.
Yeah. I hope I'm not being too. I hope I'm not being too long-winded.
Certainly not. Certainly not. You've said perhaps what a lot of us wanted to see, in such an impactful way that it pays to just sit back and allow it to sink in. When you put people in those situations, it's not only physical, but it's psychological. And it perpetuates a situation. As I like to talk about the vicious cycle of poverty. You put people in these small spaces, you give them, quote unquote, no hope of doing better, and then you see generation to generation this continues. There's an argument in this society that Guyana is now an apartheid state, where the resources are used for the development of one particular ethnic group and the oppression of another. There's an argument that the current administration seems to want to push African Guyanese to the periphery of the nation. Well, you've seen it, the breaking down of homes in Mocha, basically land grabbing, taking away land, some descendants of the African man who have those lands. and reallocating them to another ethnic group. How does one, you said, for example, if you do that to a plant, it takes a real powerful plant to eventually break out of that mold, that container which holds it. Looking in, how does it look? Does it seem as though we're going to get that kind of quote-unquote upheaval breaking out of these molds? Or does it seem as though one group of people will perhaps be quote-unquote contained?
Wait, let me see how I can be politically
Incorrect,
correct by being politically incorrect. Let me see how I could, because I listen. By the time I recognize your program, I kind of like it because I see you're making strides, and I can learn a lot from you. And so I'm always happy to see people create a platform to become the voice of the people, or at least to give the people the avenue to project their voice. I'm going to say this now, and I sincerely hope I don't offend anyone in Guyana in any way by saying this, but you see that term you've used before, Afro-Guyanese, this term Afro-Guyanese, like, what is that when you say Afro-Guyanese? Because it would imply that there's Guyanese and then there are Africans who are in Guyana. So then my question would be, well, what is a Guyanese then? Because if there's an Afro-Guyanese, then I guess there's a Chinese Guyanese, I guess there's what they call a Indian Guyanese, which is even more redundant and ridiculous. So when the same mold you're referring to, the government by virtue of their name, is the people. True democracy, even in the republic form, is that the people have an input in the decision making. But when you acquiesce, when you give up that right to make decisions and you allow the administrators, because don't get it tied up, these guys in whatever political group, regardless of the group, are simply admins. It's like going to your local franchise, but it's like going to Chapette in Barbados. I don't think there's any Chapettes in Guyana. I don't think so. But it's like going to your local franchise restaurant. You don't like the drink or the fries or the chicken or whatever you bought, the curry, the brie or whatever you bought, and you decide you want to exchange. The manager could only go and change it for you. What they cannot do is go and cook a whole different meal at your request. So I said it to say that there are always people behind the scene. The government is the administrators of the people. They're supposed to do what the people ask them and direct them to do. We have a situation now where we have allowed the government or the administrators to assume the role of the government and take charge of the people. It's a little backwards. So rather than the people have the influence and the say-so to direct their nation the direction it ought to go for the greater good of the people, we are in a situation now where we are dependent seemingly on the administrators masquerading as the government telling you what they plan to do, how they plan to do it, if they plan to do it, and when they plan to do it. And because we are now sitting like our hands out like beggars on the street corner, we kind of got to take whatever we get. You see, we have given up our power. And the reason why that has happened is also through the educational system. We were never taught certain things as a people. We were told things like, but you are Afro-Guyanese, so you are separate from the land. When the truth of the fact is, Guyana, by virtue of its name, and anybody in Guyana who is of the original folks, which if you want to call yourself African, you are the original folks, then the land rightfully belongs to you. Rightfully so. I mean, there's a day called Arrival Day that the Indians celebrate, what we call the Indians celebrate. And I ought to say what we call the Indians, because if you research the word Indian, indigo is the origin of it in terms of etymology, and that leads right back to Africa, which is funny because if there's an Indian and there's an Afro-Guyanese, and the Indian Guyanese, by virtue of his name, is African, therefore he too or she too is African Guyanese, which Guyanese by itself then are the people of the indigenous status who originally came from Africa anyhow. So it's very redundant and repetitive. Now our history books don't reflect that. What reflects that, however, is our culture. And that we need to look into. There are parts of Guyana that has never been explored. Guyana is so vast and so rich a country, but we never take the time because we're so busy focused on just surviving. Our people have been in survival mode for a very long time. And that's why no matter which government comes into play, you find that a lot of things happen. There's sabotage, there's back and forth, because we're not viewed as one nation. It's always best to divide the people and rule them and control them. And that's basically what's been going on from the inception. So keep one group against the other. We know that Indians, or what we call the East Indians, were brought over by a certain point in time in history. We know they were brought in to do indentured servant work on the contract, despite how they were treated, because however they were treated still way better than those who were brought over, enslaved, in chains, and forced to work, and then at the end of that, just dismissed with nothing. Here in Barbados, for example, there's on the record, I think on the record, they said there were over 600,000 people dwelling in Barbados at the point in time of emancipation, which is funny because our population now is about 300,000. So I always ask the question, well, wait a minute. If there's over 600,000 people, they say, was dwelling here, those who were enslaved and whatnot. And then after that, you have a population of 300,000, which is roughly a little under 300,000, which is about half. My question is, where did the enslaved people go? Where did they go? I mean, what they took a flight back home? Where did they go? Indentured servants had the opportunity of earning wealth, gaining land, or being returned home. Enslaved didn't have that. Any government right now that does not create an environment, equal opportunity for everyone, especially those who have suffered the most, note the words I'm using, who have suffered the most, is a government that is looking to re-enslave you, regardless of who it is, what form they take. Because you don't want to divide a country. Well, I'm going to do this for some people of an ethnic background, which is another funny word they give us, and I'm going to do this for another ethnic group of people, when the reality is we're all in the same land. Let a hurricane hit Guyana right now and demolish every place. Crisis promotes unity better than anything on earth. But we don't need to wait for a crisis. We are already in a crisis. These racial divides, these economic divides, these educational divides, we need to put them aside and recognize that as a people, if we are building a nation, then we need to get past certain racial barriers. As far as the apartheid aspect, well, we will receive what we allow. In order to derail certain ideas, the people, rather than begging the government, which I told you earlier, the administrators, to do for you, the people need to start to do for themselves what they ask other people to do for them. And the first thing you can do to start that is start to grow your own food. Start to feed yourself and your people. Develop relationships between each other. Whether Indo, whoever, whatever, build relationships between each other. And forget the administrators, man. And you build a force that is so powerful that you don't have to call them. They're going to call you, I guarantee. I guarantee.
Thank you. It's now 8 o'clock, a minute past the 8 o'clock hour. The nature of the program is of such that we do take calls. We do take calls. I don't know if you're disposed to taking some calls this morning.
I'm cool, man. Cool, man.
So I'll open up the lines shortly. A question has been asked. And since I like to say it's a people's station, I usually have to do what is requested of me. We currently have a situation in this country from 2020, where there's an argument that the government is quote unquote illegitimate. They've been installed, and it is alleged that your Prime Minister, Mia, has had a major role to play in the installation of this administration. I'm sure you've seen our embrace of this administration. I'm almost sure you've heard the accusations. What are your thoughts about those accusations, having seen the elections unfold and the final outcome?
But Kams, I'm glad you asked that question. By the way, shout out to Granger, by the way. I met him a few years back. As a matter of fact, in one of the youth conferences we had, giving out several awards, he came in and gave out a few awards to a few youths who have done remarkably well in our society. And when it comes to governments, right, and installed governments, I'll say this, and I'll say it again. Whether the government was installed, is installed, whether it was conspiracy by other GECOM members, what we need to understand is that before Guyana became what we now know it as, that land was there, the people were there. Before Barbados became what it is today, the land was here, the people were here. Before St. Vincent, and by the way, shout out to Yarmain and Bishai the Elder, we were always here in the region. Now, these governments are corporations for a system. Their role is to do what they're being paid to do. And if there are people who are rising up trying to bring reform and change, throughout history, we recognize what happens to individuals who try to bring that. They've always tried to find a way to marginalize them, character assassinate them. If that doesn't work, but we have Martin and Malcolm to use as examples, even Patrice Lumumba, we can go Toussaint, I mean, we can go down the line. Again, my thoughts on whether the government is installed or not installed is irrelevant. Not that my thoughts are. What I'm more interested in is what are the people doing to empower themselves? Because we know that there's always going to be an adversary. We know there's always going to be an adversary. But there's no one equal to God. There's no opposite equal force to God. God is supreme. And supreme gives us sovereignty as a people. We are sovereign people. So if you want to be governed by a set of people that might have been appointed, whether it's by some larger group for some malicious or nefarious reason, and you want to be ruled by them, then whether they're quote unquote elected or not is irrelevant, because for the most part, elections is just a census to determine who or where the mindset of the people are. Not that your vote really matters. Understand that there's a system at play that's ran by individuals behind the so-called politicians. You politicians don't run your country. Right now, EXXON is who run the oil in Guyana. If you're going to talk facts, Can, let me talk facts. The government don't run the oil in Guyana. EXXON is who run that. I think they have 45% majority shares. And all these shareholders in EXXON is who control that market. And any other market, whether it's bauxite, whether it is gold, whether it is the timber, you look at it, most corporations that say they join with the government, the corporation is the partner who's benefiting the most from it. So regardless of what government they put in place to benefit these private sectors, these are the ones you got to look at. Because these are the ones that selling the resources of the country that would benefit the country as a whole, so that you don't have any lower income people or families that are now creating these divisions for the sake of benefiting those at the top. And unless a government elected by the people, of the people, and for the people is in place, you will always have these individuals masquerading as leaders when the truth is they're puppets themselves on strings. And what we need to do as a people is sever our strings with them and create our own governing body. That's always been my position. So when you say the prime minister, by the way, the word minister means servant. The word minister means servant. The role of a minister or a prime minister is to be the prime, meaning the head servant. They're supposed to serve the people. So when you find that your servants aren't serving you, then the question is, who is really the servant? Who's really the master?
Thank you. It's now 7 minutes past 8 o'clock. The lines are open. Colin, let's talk the thing. Our guest this morning, Emmanuel Beryllia, host of Politically Incorrect out of Barbados. You've heard him talk. You've heard him address the issues. You've been given the insight of an outsider looking in. Colin, let's hear what you talk about. Let's hear what are your perspectives. Happy Republic, Guyana. It's 53 years. Are you where you would have liked to be? I think, let me see. Colin Live, good morning.
Blessed love, good morning, Brother Kadaki. And blessed love and good morning, Brother Emmanuel. And thanks for being a part of our Guyanese program. Thanks for sharing your views on how you see Guyana. And welcome, Rastafari. Blessings, my brother. Yes.
Rastafari.
So let me state that I've been listening to you, and you have talked a mouthful of good things, of real good things. But one of the things I recognize, you claim that, like, we the people need to stand up, and do our things, because the government is what got to do what we tell them to do. But our case in Guyana here is that they have people, African people, who realize, because of the non-support that we're getting from our leaders, whether they've been elected or installed, we realize that we got to get up and get. And a lot of us are striving to do that. In doing that, we've been put in an uncomfortable position where we have been attacked. For instance, the people in Moko, you have seen that they're single mothers. And so, these lands that they were on, ancestral lands, and so the lands end up, because of the road running there, the lands end up, the value of the lands start going up. So what we find happen now is that the people would be more the lands that they own, instead of trying to regularize them and give them full rights to the land, what they do is forcefully take it away from them with the intention of giving their own, who in most Guyanese minds, black people mind, is that it would be given to our Guyanese brothers and sisters who is of other ethnicity, which is like the leadership of the government. No, we're not looking down at race. We're not a people that want to look down at race, but we're being forced into that position because we have seen it happen. And it's continuing to happen, where you find where our brothers of Indian ethnicity, where they live and squatting and so on, they've been regularized and put in better position, and we've been stifling. So you're saying that we're not to look, we're to liberate ourselves then, and do for ourselves and force them to come to us. But in our doing, trying to liberate ourselves and force them to come to us, we see they come to us, yes, but what they come with? They came with police, they came with big high-mac, with big excavator, and what they do? Destabilize us, make us uncomfortable. So could you shine some light on that? And the last but not least is that I would like, as a Bajan brother, I would like that on your programs back home, your Prime Minister has stated that the head of the regime that we say the installed regime, the head of this, she claimed that is her big brother. So I would like her to know or answer this question, how she feel with the works, with the attacks from our big brother towards the people that looks like her, how it look into her eyes, because we haven't heard nothing from her, because she was saying a lot. She was saying a lot and visiting a lot. And now we haven't heard or seen or nothing from her this time. Blessed love, my brother, and have a good one.
Yes.
Thank you, brother.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I love the passion in that caller's voice. That's that energy that keeps us together. Once we start to look past these flags and see divisions because of water, the elder always said, the water does not divide us, my brother. The water unites us. So what's happening in Guyana, like I said, affects all of us throughout the entire region. And what happened in Mocha, let me start with that first, with what we would call the original people of the land, where the government came and stole the land again. That's what they do. That's what they've been doing, is capture land. And they've been doing it from the time they arrived. And what we need to recognize now is that we can no longer keep turning cheeks. We don't have any more cheeks to turn. So when I say that in one breath, I will say this in another. You have not heard anything from any other Caribbean leader, to my knowledge, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me, regarding what happened there. What happened there is an atrocity. It's a crime against humanity. I mean, there should have been international. Look, right now, Ukraine and Russia. Anything that Putin does is highlighted across the globe. Everyone is to see what's happening to the victims of Ukraine, which is a whole different conversation. What happened to the victims in Guyana? Why is it that the world isn't having an outcry for this event? This is a crime against humanity. The government has no authority to go on sacred land and move people from their ancestral land. They have no authority. The fact they did that by itself is a crime. Now, they may tell you that we have the legal right to do this, which is fine, and they probably do. The problem with legality is that sometimes, more often than not, it contradicts morality. And that is the issue when they bring these so-called legal things. It is not lawful. It might be legal, but it's not lawful. Keep in mind that enslavement and slavery was legal, but it wasn't lawful. It wasn't morally right. So although they try to use these terms, then use the security forces, which are known as the police, the policy enforcers of the plantocracy or the corporation, what they now call the country. That is where the problem is coming in. Where is the security force for the ancestral people? Where is our security force? I'll tell you where the security force is at. The security forces are either in the grave or in prison. Because our people as a people, our army, are these same young men on the blocks, the same young men that congregates in little sectors. This is the army of the people. The problem is that they have been given an identity that they look at each other as the enemy. As the enemy. They don't defend the people the way they ought to. It's time that we step up, because I guarantee you, they would never go into any other community and try that. Because most of those communities have individuals that may step up in a different way. And once they felt that that threat was real, and by the way, I'm not promoting violence against anyone or any individual or administration. What I'm saying is that the people have a right to defend themselves against any form of terrorism, whether foreign or domestic. And as far as I'm concerned, that was a terrorist attack on innocent people, regardless of what negotiations were happening 2, 3, 4, 5 years before. If the people decided we do not want to leave our ancestral land, there is no, unless there was a threat or a danger to them or their family by way of, let's say, volcano or flood or whatever. Outside of that, there should be no way you should force the people off, especially in the manner you did, for the world to see. And then there's no outcry, whether from the prime servant in Barbados, Trinidad, Dominic, the whole CARICOM, as a matter of fact. So that lets us know that they all in cahoots. That's why we, the people of the Caribbean, if CARICOM is the leaders at the top, then we're the leaders that are on the ground. We're the leaders throughout the entire region that's on the ground. What is Dominica, Jamaica, Haiti, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Kitts, Grenada, Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana, Suriname. Where are the indigenous leaders? Where are the chiefs? Where are we? Because if we keep letting this happen, our people are going to be destroyed. One nation at a time. Enough is enough, my brother.
Thank you for that response. As old people say, you gotta read between the lines. Read between the lines. Quality of life, thank you for holding.
Yeah, good morning, Kadaki. A happy Republic to all Guyanese. Today is our 53rd. Don't mind it. I don't think it was being heralded by the wonderful fireworks that we are normally accustomed to. Probably that has moved to Diwali. Now to the people of BV. I'm not going far off. I would like to congratulate you on winning back your lands. And I start occupying, putting down things on the land so that it must not ever be taken away from your game. There's a saying, what you don't use, you will lose. Go down and occupy. Now to the talk this morning, I listened to part of it. But I like the last question you posed to the person, Kadaki, about the intrusion of their head of state into Guyana politics. I could remember years ago when Guyana, many men in Guyana who are palm boilers, homes got destroyed because they were seconded to that same country to boil palm for about 9 months. And you know, men stay when they got about 2-3 family all around the place. So a lot of homes, many children lost their fathers and so. Anyway, people got big and decided to go to the famous country. And there was a particular bench reserved for Guyanese people on entry to Barbados. And why I talk about that, we visited other countries like the ABC, Canada, England, North America, and there was not ever a bench provided for us to sit on as we deplane and send back. If you go into the country, you are found with on custom goods, whether it be drugs whatsoever. Some of them bands put in my ticket and eat it or throw it away, but they allow you drugs. They used to process you and put you in jail if you got to serve jail and send you back. But in Barbados, as soon as you got there, you were on that bench. But after 2015, with the leader, President David Arthur Granger, showing the entire world that Guyana became an oil-rich country, oil-rich state, the bench, I think it must be broke up, they must be burn it up, so they ain't got a bench. And when, I'm quite certain, the historian that Granger was, when the head of that country approached him to swear allegiance now, because CARICOM used to treat Guyana bad with all Burnham, LFS Burnham, President Burnham, was one of the executive and founder members of CARICOM. They had a lot of problem with us Guyanese. Anyway, excuse me. When we came in our rich state, she interceded into Guyana. When she approached Granger, I'm quite certain, and she think Granger must have reminded her. So what she did, she became Delilah and Queen of Sheba to King Solomon, Delilah to Samson, and destroyed this country. But you know, as the cries of the Africans in this country go up, we will get through it. And we will always, the fair-minded person will always see your leader as an instigator of our demise and destruction. When Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley came to Guyana that morning of the election when they came here, he said, I'm not going to partake of this. This is not for me. She remained. And when she got here, she toured Guyana and she made certain that she secured hectares of land for Barbados. But we will go back and we will throw out because Barbados never, ever showed us any love prior to 2015. My 4 parents are lanes. 3 of them came to Guyana. 1 went to County of Essequibo, 1 stayed in Demerara, and 1 stayed in Barbados. But like I tell you, brother, I would never go to Barbados. And anytime God give me that to travel and leave this country, the first thing I will do is find out my flight plan. And if the star got to come off in Barbados or anything, I'm walking with black bags. So as not to bring y'all dust on my shoes because y'all hate Guyanese. And just like now, and y'all president, and show the hatred of us, of you Barbadians to us. So I can't like y'all. Bye-bye.
You know, I say nothing. Emmanuel, go ahead.
No. I wanted her to get that off. I wanted her to finish what she was saying. I was listening very attentively, And I admire the passion in the voice, and I was happy that she could express that, because I want to respond to her fairly. So I wanted her to finish. I don't know if she's still there, if she's no longer there.
She's listening. Call all the line,
Okay.
please. Go ahead,
Okay. Well, if she's finished, I would speak. If she's finished.
Yes, you go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Well, wow. Look, I have heard so many things. Barbados don't like Guyanese. Barbados don't like Trinidad. Bajans don't like. And I say Barbadian versus Bajan because I know that's a term they use in the Caribbean, Bajan. Now, I am not too familiar with the origin of it. I have an idea where it came from, and I don't particularly use it. I don't really identify myself as Bajan per se. I use the word Barbadian, but that's another conversation. But what I would say to the sister who have, she don't like Barbados or Barbados don't like Guyana, these are things that are done at the governmental level, because I'm in Barbados. When I go downtown where the Guyanese are hanging out, playing their music on Fridays or wherever else, I guarantee you, we all mingle, we all party together, we all enjoy each other's company. I too have dear friends that are Guyanese, born, raised, live here, work with me. And so I can't say that Guyana don't like Barbadians. I would say that they're individuals at certain levels that promote division, so that a day like today, when what's happening in Mocha and across Guyana is taking place, I am to think, well, Guyanese don't like Bajans, so that's their business. And that's why that mindset is promoted across the region. Guyanese don't like this body, Bajans don't like Jamaicans, and they try to keep us so divided, but we want people. As a matter of fact, at some point in history, and Cam, you could tell me on this one today, there was a whole host of Barbadians that went to Guyana for work because there was nothing happening in Barbados. This is probably over a century ago. They sent a whole lot of people down there from Barbados, and a lot of them never came back. So a lot of the relationships that we have between each other, or the lack of relationship, is because the system, again, the administrators promote that division. And they feed off the division so that we don't come together like a day. Can you imagine, right? The people on the ground in Guyana, the people on the ground in Barbados and Dominica, St. Vincent, Trinidad, across the whole region, were to decide to rise up like Haiti did and take their country at the same time. Can you imagine the impact that would have? How that would connect us? Like I said, the water does not divide us, sis. We're not divided by the water. We are one people. We've been one people. And if we allow these administrators to do things to promote division, then all we will see is division. If we lack to see division, all we will see is division. And so I admire your passion. And I think that if you ever were to come to Barbados, make sure you shout me, man, so we can have a good day at the beach, sit down, relax, enjoy yourself. You ain't gonna sit on no bench at the airport. You ain't gonna sit at no bench. I know if the government in the past used to do that, it was done deliberately again to create a certain mindset. But let's not promote that division. Let's find ways to connect. Let's look at what we have more in common and see how we can help each other out of this little struggle. Because if we don't help each other, what is it? Today for me, tomorrow for you? Well, I don't want that. I'm saying let us find a way to unite. Let's find a way to bring our concerns together and bring our resolutions together and see how best we can help each other grow, strive, and create a better region, not the West Indies, but the Caribbean, for our children and our children's children, man. Let's find ways to connect rather than push divisions, respectfully.
Thank you. Call up. Thank you for holding your life. One minute, call. I need to get your volume up. That was when the thing chose to back up WhatsApp messages. All the thing.
You get too many messages, man.
1 minute.
Don't let them fool you. Oh no.
People try to school you.
We refuse to be who they want us to be here.
We
know who we are.
Call you still there? Call you live. Good morning. think I lost one. Caller Live, good morning.
Yes, good morning to you and your guests and all my black brothers and sisters in Guyana. Happy 23rd. Let me say this to my favorite call-in black sister, Rhonda. What Rhonda say, she's right, and I will back you up with these words before I go what I wanted to say this morning. His Prime Minister came to Guyana during our 2020 election. These are things he must hear and make up his mind to listen.
Caller, stop. Caller, stop. I think we can better use the time if we stop repeating what was said already. I think by now our guest understands that, look, his Prime Minister came to Guyana. We believe that she interfered in our politics. We see the result of it. There are lots of wrongdoings on the part of the government. The people she supports in government, she is not commenting on it. I think we have made that point. It will better help us to introduce new points of discussion. Okay,
If I can, let me just make this clear for the record, so we can go forward again. Let me just make this abundantly clear. Mayor Amor Motley, by name, is the prime servant, what we call the prime minister of the corporation known as Barbados, or the country that was created in 1966, because prior to 1966, there was no country in the world as Barbados. There was a colony called Barbados, but it wasn't no country. It was only created a few years ago, 50-something years ago, just like your republic, which is really a joke, but that's to no disrespect intended. Republic, the word republic, meaning it's public, well, there's public and there's private. And the private is who get ahead and succeed in life. It's the public that have all the problems. Republic and democracy, these are terms, again, they use and keep us so divided with this political science. It's called a science for a reason that most people don't even understand. So we're going to get these terms all the time. My prime minister, Mayor Motley is not my prime minister. I have never voted for her. I don't support the political parties. I support the people, especially the people who are on the ground, who are most oppressed, regardless of where they are. So I don't get into the politics aspect. A woman from Barbados that represents the corporation came to Guyana and intervened in it. Not because she wanted to, because she's a servant too, and she has to listen to who's pulling the strings behind her. So if we think there's a difference between Guyana politicians and Barbados politicians, we are deceiving ourselves. Guyana politicians weren't just put there in place. It was a plot probably long before we were aware of it. The point I want to make is, what are we as the people today in 2023 going to do to benefit us, our children, and our children's children? That's what we need to focus on. That's my 2 cents, man.
Thank you. Caller.
Yes. Okay. This is our FOPS, our ex-Prime Minister and President month. And I'm saying this now to the opposition leader when he get back in office, which is he will. The first month or 6 months, that airport at Segijagan Airport is more changed to Firstbornham International Airport. The airport at Ogle, it must change to Walter Rodney International Airport. The reason why? Because the Indians stand up in parliament and tell we, which is, I know it's totally ignorant, tell black people what you did for your people them. So we will do for our people them when we get in office. To all Guyanese, my black brothers and sisters, it is time for you guys read, go to King James and read the Prodigal Son. That when he acknowledged what he was doing is wrong, he said, I will arise and go back home. It's time for black people stop busting up their vote and give double pay and pay until they vote. And you will not be punished anymore, because we will be having a president who will stand for all, not for one Guyana. Because we was taught in school years ago, one people, one nation, one destiny. We was taught in school that it was 3 Guyana, Dutch, British, and I forgot the next one.
French.
French, thank you very much. Let me move on. This is the only way we could bring this government out of office. And let me tell my black brothers and sisters about politics and politics. Jack Deal going to introduce about 15 more parties come 2025. And what he going to do? He going to put an Indian man for president candidate and put a black man for prime minister candidate. You know why? It's for bust of the black vote again. My grandmother teach me at the age of 9, my grandson, who sting for me, I will rattle for them. The two parties the three men that you're rattling for us is you, Mr. Amsterdam, Mr. David Hines, and Mr. Norton, and couple MP. Those are the people rattling for us right now. So those are the people that are thinking for us right now. So we must be rattling for them and put you guys in office come to the election. The AFC damaged us today. They did nothing for us from since time they built AFC. They did nothing for the people that are in Guyana, nothing. Ramzatan Cho, the black brothers and sisters in the party, a couple months ago, he said, if left for I will stay in the coalition. Like if Mr. Dummy never went to school, born and teach me. You read the fine point. He said, is the member in the board vote for leave AFC. The member that vote 95% is black people. Black people said, it's your black man and in the bus, and it's time for black people leave AFC and put your vote come 2025 to WPA and PNC. All of Ramzatan fighting for is to get C more than PNC in Parliament. I never see Ramzatan pick up AFC people and protest nowhere. It's you. You are Mr. Norton. You are Mr. Norton. You are Mr. Norton. And Mr. Desmond. And Mr. David Hines. Leave in America, come home, always leave in America and celebrate us and fight for us. All of the little party, I never see none of them come out and protest nothing. Therefore, my black brothers and sisters, this is Flash Garden. I'll be coming home after we finish, retire for celebrate on Guyana Street because Facebook always cut me off. But they cannot cut me off on my land in Guyana. I'm coming home to protest myself.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll tell you something. Yeah, I might just... You know,
You're
sometimes...
passionate, man. You're passionate. You're
That's
passionate,
not you
man.
light my... Sometimes you light my fuse. Understand this. Sometimes we have to focus on what is ahead of us. We're having a particular line of discussion this morning. As old people say, you must get time and place. Sometimes you have to choose what you're discussing when. Good? Let us focus on what we were discussing, what we've been discussing. There are other issues which I know people are passionate about and they would like to talk about, but there will be a time and place to that. For example, Friday we do Free Talk Friday. Some of these issues can very well wait until Free Talk Friday. We're not going to get Emmanuel here every day to talk with us. You're going to get me every day. Okay? So let's focus on that, please. It's now 24 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. Kofi is on the line. And Kofi and I have a particular agreement. So Kofi is going to speak for about 12 minutes. Emmanuel, bear with him. Caller, you're live.
Yes, sir. Yes, good morning, Kadaki. Good morning, all Guyanese. Good morning, everyone in the diaspora. Good morning to our distinguished guests. Greetings, my brother Emmanuel. Glad to have you here. Water doesn't separate it. It only divides us. So I totally agree with you on that aspect, and I'd like to build with you and build with our current situation of how we can merge the diaspora and make the ideal of the Treaty of Chagaramas real, being that you were here. Once again, we're glad to have you. I'll be remiss if I didn't say that what has happened in our last elections is causing us much consequential and humanitarian problems. And you are attesting to that. So I'm glad that you're here to see that sometimes when a person throws the rock and they leave. So I'm not going to go any further on that. But I'm glad that you're here to witness firsthand what we are now having to reap. This morning I wanted to touch on something that deals with our republic, Brother Emmanuel. And given the fact that our sister country, Barbados, is a new republic, you can relate. Mr. Kadaki, can you play the first part of that video by our president? Just the first part. Because of time, I'm not going to go through the entire part of it. But if, Mr. Kadaki, you think we should go through the entire video, which is only 6 minutes, then you can decide. So you can start the video at this point if you like and let me know. Well, I'm listening. I will tell you when to stop.
That's a politician and you speaking, right? You wouldn't play the entire video, but if I think, what was that? Trick question, right?
No, because you see, you're managing the clock, and I'm watching at you. I'm concerned about your clock.
I hear you, brother.
Yeah, your time.
I'm trying to find the video. Oh, it's here. Good.
Okay, good. Before you start it,
yes.
I would like viewers to pay attention to what is being said with regards to our 1763 rebellion and how it is referenced in relation to our republic. Then we pay attention to other great things that were brought on stream by our government in that time. You can go ahead, sir.
I'm getting there.
Guyanese. Comrades, fellow Guyanese, 9 years ago, we Guyanese made the final and decisive assertion of our political and psychological independence by completely severing the remaining constitutional links with the colonial power. For us, the coming into being of the Cooperative Republic was the logical culmination of the struggle for independence, initiated over 200 years ago by our national hero, Coffee, at Magdalenenberg in Berbice. But, as I have always emphasized, political independence is not an end in itself. Rather, it represents an opportunity to create a society in which all citizens are assured of social and economic justice. The People's National Congress at all times recognized that the process of transforming the society, which process will be given new impetus and momentum with the promulgation later this year of the new Constitution, was not going to be an easy task, and that the path ahead would be strewn with many obstacles. The PNC, as the party in government, never attempted to delude the Guyanese people about the sacrifices which would be demanded of all of us as we moved in unison to free our country from poverty, want, hate, fear, and foreign domination. The process of nation building and societal transformation is never easy. You, for instance, in North America, would do well to acquaint yourselves with the hardships and privations which went into making the United States the world's richest and most powerful country today. At the moment in Guyana, We are going through a period of difficulty. And this is not peculiar to us, but is the common, unfortunate lot of most, if not all, of the non-oil producing developing countries. Indeed, even the developed countries, and many of you can personally attest to this, have not escaped the effects of the worldwide crisis. But for all the problems being experienced at home, and which you have most certainly heard about, development has not stagnated. For example, last year witnessed the initiation of massive ventures like the Tapakuma scheme, $103 million, the Mahaika Maikoni Abari scheme, $200 million, the Upper Demerara River Forestry Project, $76 million, and the Blackbush Polar Extension, $115 million. It was the year also of the completion of the Kanji Bridge and that dream of the Demerara River Bridge, which many of us had despaired of seeing in our lifetime. During this year, it is expected, among other things, that work will commence on the erection of a solvent plant for extracting oil from rice bran, and also that there will be the manufacture on a large commercial scale of byproducts like vinegar and yeast from molasses. Just a few days ago, your government released the Guyana Investment Code, which, as its name implies, sets out the guidelines for investing in Guyana. It is a document which all of you should scrutinize and popularize, and one which, by setting out clearly and unequivocally the government's policy in this area, should hopefully answer many questions and set clear parameters. Sure, we have had and will continue to have difficulties. And of course there was Jonestown. But we are confronting these issues and problems with a grit, determination, and intensity, which daily suggests that we shall overcome. Finally, let me assure you that your government considers you to be very much part of Guyana and welcomes you home. Indeed, invites you to join in the exciting, though demanding task of development and nation building. As we celebrate the 9th anniversary of the Cooperative Republic, I feel confident that you must realize that you have a motherland of which you can be proud, and which at all times offers you a hospitable and receptive embrace. Happy Mashramani.
Coffee, you like?
Yes, Mr. Kadaki, thank you for playing that. That says a lot. That says that the WPA generation and the PNC generation are moving together as one family today. And to the haters of the world, they've got to recognize that, because they're busy trying to divide us. And more stones they throw, the stronger we get and the more unified we are. So that says that much to the PPP. They lose on that aspect. We are winning. You know, President Burnham spoke about contributions. He spoke about the contributions that Africans made to Guyana. And right now we see in Woodley Park and other parts of this country, people are being made to feel as though we have no part in Guyana. Dr. Hines spoke about the apartness that is very pervasive in Guyana. It has now become almost a culture the way in which the PPP seeks to ostracize our contribution. So President Burnham put it in context. What did he say? He said this republic is premised and based upon what was started by our hero, Kofi, and our ancestors in the 1763 Berbice Rebellion against the Dutch. What does that mean? In the republic concept, it says that an ideal to be free, to be sovereign, was started by Kofi in that rebellion. Forbes Burnham, as a lawyer, decided, and he had all right, because Kofi established victory then against the Dutch. I said it last year, I'm saying it again. Kofi established victory and ownership. Check the archives of Holland. He wrote letters saying that this territory called this land, which they had won, they now own as sovereign land. That accomplishment doesn't just disappear because the British wants it to disappear. So it's fitting that I resurrect that again so that we can properly understand what our contributions were then and what our contributions need to be and recognized for today. Ownership then is ownership now. So when we talk about Mashramani and when we talk about Woodley Park and us people trying to make us believe that we don't have no part of Guyana, I said, wake up and recognize that this republic, we are the originators of it. Many may not like it, but it is what it is. Now, notice President Burnham spoke because why he is such a prophetic person, man of the century. Why? Notice in 1979, President Burnham was keenly aware of the relationship between oil, foreign domination, and United States. Notice he talked about that. He talked about oil, foreign domination, United States. And the issue which we are grappling with now is oil, foreign denomination, and the United States. And that was 1979. So some people may have believed that President Burnham didn't have his eyes on the prize. Some people now come into office and they have lost the prize. Let me make a distinction before I close. We can choose to fight a war on two fronts. We can choose to fight the war for sovereignty, or we can choose to embark upon the mission of economic inclusion, neo-capitalism. When we grab that bone of neo-capitalism, there are consequences. And the consequences which we are suffering are the same consequences which President Burnham was trying to avoid. President Burnham could have taken an oil deal since 1979. He could have taken it since then. But had he taken it since then, he would have lost sovereignty. Right now, our political leaders, the best that they're trying, they have grabbed on to the oil deal and lost the bone of sovereignty. And that's why you see Maka is happening the way it's happening. Linden is being bulldozed at will. Lands are being wrestled away from you. Because inherently, our people inherently have forgotten about the fight for sovereignty. We have compromised that and embarked upon neo-capitalism and this big economic glitz and flashy lights economy. We are gaining one, at least we think we're gaining one, but we're losing the other. Notice that the monies that are coming for the oil aren't benefiting us while we are losing our sovereignty. And that's the pendulum shift that is happening subtly. It has already happened. Once again, I want to say glad to have this young brother from Barbados. You said you used to live in the United States or North America, so I understand from whence you, some of your
sensitivities come from, I understand. And hopefully we can work collaboratively within the spirit of Chagaramas, within the spirit that we are one people on a struggle. Hopefully we can work on that premise, Brother Emmanuel. And we can go places with that in terms of something. Once again, thank you for having me. And once again, thank you for...
Thank you for calling.
Yes. Good morning. Happy Independence to
It's Republic, sis.
Amsterdam.
It's Republic.
Republic, sorry. To you and your guest, Brother Emmanuel. I must thank him for discovering you and to come on the program, because you know what? I would often be looking at programs for the different Caribbean countries, and they never ever would mention anything about Guyana. So I thank the brother, and I know that we are going somewhere. What we need to do is to embrace this brother, that he can help us in the fight, and we need him. And we are our brother's keeper. So if something is wrong in Guyana, as he said, it would affect the people in Barbados and the other countries. So let us learn something from the brother. We have what it is. Every day you can Google something. Something was invented by some black person, and we have the backbone, we have the spine. So let us use the brother. He can help us in the fight. We can help him, and we will get there. Happy holiday to you folks, and God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your call. Well, Emmanuel.
Yes.
You're in control.
Well, let me start by saying thank you, sis. Definitely honors and respect to you as well. And like I said, the whole Guyana as a whole, you know, without the divisions. Like the brother said, like I also say, the water doesn't divide us. The water is what unites us. And that is our connection. And the brother Kofi, very, very, very enlightening. I would love to have a conversation with the brother. He reminds me of another brother, Kwame in Trinidad. Big up to Kwame, by the way. There are a lot of brothers putting in work on the ground throughout the entire region. And like the sister rightfully said, we can learn a lot from each other. We don't have to fight this fight on our own. I think that's where we've been going wrong. As a matter of fact, one of Rodney's books was how Europe underdeveloped Africa. And I'm certain if he had enough time, he would have written another book, how Europe underdeveloped the Caribbean. Because without question, we look to Africa as if that was the only place that was destabilized, as if that was the place where there were people and nobody else was anywhere else. And like the brother rightfully said, we are the original folks that were here. Not everybody came across on what they call a slave ship. There were folks here way before the invaders, or what I could rightfully say, the devils showed up. And that's just the reality. Like the brother said, we could focus on sovereignty and fight back for the land, or we could look at building economics. Well, the truth is, I'm looking at merging both. You know, you can't think about being sovereign and not factor in economics. There are things we need to do. We need to develop our own wellness centers, what they call hospitals, get back to our indigenous form of healing, back to the roots, back to the herbs. We need to get back to planting, back to food, because what the foods they're giving us mostly is processed and all kind of chemicals promoting cancer. Most of these crops are sprayed heavily with pesticides and all kind of other stuff, which destroys the soil, which is a whole different conversation. And you should have that conversation with the elder from St. Vincent, who is very knowledgeable in farming, Brother Bishai, Ras Bishai, and also then the education system. So there are things that we need to put in place to build our own system. As a matter of fact, the Christian brothers, the Bible say at some point, come out of her, my people. Well, it's time to come out of them. Whether, again, they're appointed, whether they cheat, whether they did whatever. We need the people to start looking at ways to govern themselves. That's what the brother was saying earlier about the prime servant of Barbados. And I'm not saying that in any derogatory term. I usually say that as a reminder to the people. These people that they put in place are supposed to serve the interests of the country. The problem is The country belongs to them as a corporation. We, the people, don't have no interest in that. That's why we always in a position seemingly begging them to do something. We got to stop asking them to do for us what we can do for ourselves. And that's just the reality. Now, it may take a little stepping back on learning some things, relearning some things. But the reality is, if we do not do it, think about what's at stake. What are the consequences? So our children, they're watching us. Our children's children are in line. So are we going to develop a better nation for them? Or are we going to keep fighting this political ping pong war between two parties? It's usually always a two-party system. Usually always a two-party system. When you find there's a coalition, it works to some degree, but then there are folks trying to undermine it to get themselves back in place. It's purely tribalism. That's all it boils down to. We don't call it that in 2023, but think about it. You know, they promote their own, they help their own, and that kind of secret money handshake, whatever crap they go through. And that's what that is. But the reality is the people are many. And it's time that we not just organize, because we've been having organizations, but we have not been centralized. It's time to come together. We organize, we centralize in order to mobilize. Your brother talked about one aim and one destiny. Well, question, what is our destiny? Where are we going with this? And if we're talking about comfortability before enslavement versus liberation, those are two different conversations being held by two different groups. One group want to stay in Egypt, and there's another group that want to cross the Red Sea. It's time to leave Egypt, family. And that's all I've been saying. And that's all I'm going to keep saying, because those who want to stay, let them stay. Those who have eyes to see, let them see. And those who have the ears of hearing and understanding, let us do so. And let us organize, centralize, and mobilize. Not just in Guyana, but regionally and then internationally. You know, that's my position, man. We one nation. Let's rebuild that.
Thank you. It's 9 o'clock on the hour, and so we have a few voice notes which I'll play, and then I'll ask you to do the wrap-up, brother.
Good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. Good morning, viewers. Good morning to your guests. Great show, great show. Mr. Kadaki,
I'll be taking no more calls, please. Thank you.
I say it all the time. Guyanese should plant their own fruits and vegetables. There's a lot of things that Guyanese can do to help themselves before they ask the government. There's a lot of things they can do in the communities to help one another. And I think your guest said the right thing. He's educating the people, which in most Guyanese know what they're supposed to do. So they got to get up and do it. Get busy. Don't worry, these politicians, they're just in there full in their pockets. They don't care about the people. The PVP do not care about the people. Look what's going on in Guyana. Every day is something. Black people are being marginalized, be discriminated, be disrespect. That is what they're doing. And it's time Afro-Guyanese get up and Indo-Guyanese get up. Hustle for yourself. You guys hustle for yourself. It's a shame whenever the PPP in government, the way they treat Afro-Guyanese. And I do hope, from what your guest is saying, that Afro-Guyanese and the Indo-Guyanese listen and take that good advice and move forward to make Guyana a better place for all its citizens. That is my take for today. Bye.
Good morning, Kadaki. It is that your guest is saying that Guyanese people should leave all of those billions of US dollars that is passing over their head and come together and go and do farming. And leaving all of those money, all of those resources to those crooks, rogues and vagabonds. That what he's saying? No, Guyanese people are entitled. It is not right. So I think Guyanese are entitled and should fight more to be a part of the oil resources in Guyana. Bye.
Morning, Kadaki. Morning to the brother. Blessed love. I didn't call to talk about what we're on to talk about, but I'm going to jump in a little bit. Rhonda, I would love for Rhonda to visit the Bahamas. We have lived for 13 years. And if she want to see xenophobia towards Caribbean people, Barbados may have, and Trinidad may have xenophobia towards selective Caribbean people, right? And we know that is right. Even back in slavery days, you look at us, the darker ones, you're less worthy than the lighter skinned ones. You know, it was something used from since creation of time, coming through to the colonial times, every single thing against us because they know us. Right? And it still continues to be used within our governments in our black places and black forces. Even in Africa, they're facing it. Certain Africans can't travel to certain places. You have to get visa, you have to get different. Africans are being deported out of African countries more than, right? Deported at airports more than any other body, you know, you understand? But Rhonda, you need to visit Bahamas. Bahamas, let me give you the record. The persons who face the most xenophobia in Bahamas is the Haitians. Then the Jamaicans, and I always say this, the others, and the others are us, Bajans, Guyanese, Trinidadians, etc. Good. With that said, the brother talking about CARICOM supposed to jump up and make noise about what's going on in Guyana. CARICOM was created by the founding leaders who saw and wanted unity within us, the Caribbean islands and country, right? That was the major thing they created CARICOM for, and to, you know, for that start doing trading, one currency, etc., etc. But I'm going to tell you what CARICOM has become today. CARICOM has become a club for the leaders to reach, drink wine, make deals, personal deals, in office and for future when they get out of office. And I'm ready to challenge anybody, debate with anybody to tell me what CARICOM has done that has benefited us, the people in the Caribbean, collectively. That is what I'm ready. I'm ready to challenge anyone to show me what they have done. And Rhonda said that Bajans coming to Guyana with a deal that what's her name made. And she got hectares of land for Bajan people to come and work on. She got hectares of land for herself. Show me a plane load of Bajan people that came in to occupy anything in Guyana. Right? Show me that. Number two, yes, Rowley was smart enough to see what's going on, but Rowley ran back to Trinidad for his personal gains. Everything that was done there, and the proof is in the pudding, CARICOM and all the CARICOM leaders are for themselves. You're not about the people. So, you know, we can't expect them to jump up and holler and blow any bell horn. So, yeah, that's it.
Happy Republic to all Guyanese. Brother Emmanuel, big up yourself. Yeah, large up yourself, King. Yeah, Kings of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering lion in the tribe of Judah, elect of Jah, Rastafari.
Right. Yes, I am.
Brother Emmanuel,
yes,
6 minutes to 9. I have the pleasure of asking you to give your final thoughts and closing remarks.
Well, let me first say again, thank you for having us, because I come with many, you know, and it's been an honor, it's been an experience. And thanks to everyone who tuned in, whether tuned in now or later. And thanks to those who called in and also those who left the voice notes. I really do appreciate the feed forward. And it's only through the dialogue. I don't debate. I actually only converse with my equals, everybody else I teach. I don't debate anybody. I'm always open to learn. So I'm always listening to learn. And sometimes you have to unlearn what you think you know in order to embrace something that might be more current. So having said that, I want to address a few of the things. First, like I said, the sister, I definitely appreciate what she said in terms of getting back to agriculture and growing your own food. That's from a health perspective, regardless of whether you think that you are interested and should have access to the resources. What good is the resources if your health is ailing and you're dying? What profit a man to gain the world and lose his soul? And no, I'm not suggesting that Guyana lay down and play possum as all these resources that rightfully belong to them. Not what I said, that rightfully belongs to them. Leave their hands and go elsewhere. Well, reality, that's what's going on. I think EXXON has 45% I think China has 30%, and Hess has 25% of the earnings of the 10 billion barrels. I think it's 10 billion barrels they're projected to have out of Guyana, one of the largest oil reserves they found from time memorial. No, I'm not suggesting you walk away and leave that. I'm suggesting you start to find yourself in a position to negotiate those deals rather than sit back and wait for some politician, mostly a lawyer who's part of the Bar Association, which is the British Accreditation Registry, their loyalties to the colonial power, to negotiate it for you. So no, my brother, I'm not suggesting you go plant food and forget the resources by far. I'm simply saying we need to get informed so we can get informed, if you understand what I'm saying. So if you want to, we could converse that perhaps going forward, or you could join me on Politically Incorrect Monday, Wednesdays, or Fridays, and we could have that conversation on a different platform where we could speak differently. What I will say also is CARICOM is just a branch of Commonwealth, going back to Europe. So I wasn't suggesting that they were going to do something. I'm actually saying the quite opposite. I'm saying don't expect nothing to be done. So it goes back to my original point again. I am saying we need to start governing ourselves. Governing ourselves. We need to stop depending on people to do for us what we can do for ourselves, including negotiating the exchange of goods or resources. We need to stop giving it out. Why can't Guyana now look to build an oil refinery rather than give it to EXXON to do the same thing, to give you back something after the fact? No, I'm saying we need to take control of our country. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Our nation, because the country belongs to them. You never had a say-so in it. You don't have a say-so in it, and you will never have a say-so in it. But the nation of Guyana, that was here before there was these fancy people with their fancy words, we were always here. It's time to claim our inheritance, including the resources, and what is to be gained from the resources so we can better empower not just our people, but Guyana as a whole, as one nation. Anybody who's opposed to that, well, you know, they speak for themselves. But for us, it's one people. And if I could just say this as well, like I said, I want to thank everyone who's tuning in across the region, across the globe. But Guyana, Barbados, see that division they're trying to promote? Man, look, Kadaki, I don't know this man from a hole in the wall from a can of paint. But this is my brother. This is my brother. You put two of us to stand up in a line next to some person from the colonial powers and ask them where the African, they ain't going to say, well, that one there got locks and he got little salt and pepper gray hair, so they're different. They can select the two of them right there. They can select the two of them right there. They ain't going to see no difference. The only, we is who see a difference. Promoting one colonial country over another. Ivan Ascension. I was in St. Vincent and I asked most people in St. Vincent where that name come from. And out of maybe 1,000 people I asked that question, only one man gave me the answer. I'm a proud Vincentian. Okay, where did the word St. Vincent come from? No one knew. No one who could tell me. Only one man knew. So we inherited a lot of information that is disinformation that is meant to keep us divided. I am simply saying it's time to do some unlearning as a people and time to do some relearning. A lot of us were raised in the church. So I'll leave this verse with you. There's a book in the Bible, Psalms 82, I believe. Not getting religious. I'm simply saying, go read Psalms 82. Let's start looking at who we are as a people in the eyes of God, rather than looking at people in the eyes of man. We are divine beings. We are original beings. We're sovereign beings. And we are here to do one thing and one thing only. Make it better now than it was when we first came. I think, brother man, I think I pretty much summed it up. Oh, and by the way, the last point. See that xenophobia is what it's called? Bahamas and Haitians and Jamaicans and all this other stuff. Again, a lot of it is based on ignorance. We are one people. And the more we look at how we can come together to build each other and not let these flags divide us. Jamaican motto is out of many, we are one people. Let us become out of many that one people. That we could build our communities, build our villages, build our nations, build the region, and become that empire, that strong people that we once were going forward. Rastafari, Haile Selassie I, Empress Preserve Menin, is the perfect balance.
When and where do they find your program? What time they can tune in?
Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday at 8 Eastern time, which is our time. Politically Incorrect. There's a dash between in and correct. I'm incorrect. There's a dash between the two. because you can't do certain things online. But you'll find me if you want to find me. My Facebook page is my name, Emmanuel Beryllia, and you can always find a link from there. No problem.
Respect. Once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for most tantalizing, enlightening discourse. And certainly, we'll be working together. I look forward to working together. We'll certainly be collaborating much, much more. Thank you very much. From the outside looking in, what is Guyana? Have a good day, my brother.
All right, brother, man. Salute.
Respect. And so it's 30 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour. As you know, we have exceeded our time. We have exceeded our time. It's Republic Day. You have a good Republic Day. Whatever you do, my encouragement is make some money. Remember that. Make some money. Right? Mash your money, mash your money. Don't go mashing up your money. It is already a challenge for you to earn enough. It's already a challenge for you to elevate yourselves. So invest the little that you can to earn more. Today is a great day for making some money, I can tell you. Those of you who are good juice makers, go out there and make some money off of juice, because the weather, lots of people will be out there. They need to be, what we call it, hydrated, yes, and refreshed. Go there. You can do a quick fast food, go out there, make some money. I tell you, money out there to make, right? So don't only focus on the revelry, focus on the economic and financial independence. Have a good day. Dr. Hines is likely to be on this evening, so you can join him for Politics 101. And definitely tomorrow, we are at it again, talking the thing, Free Talk Friday. Goodbye. Stay safe. Love y'all. BUXTONIANs are still waiting for y'all to respond to me. There's a need in the village, which I'm encouraging you all to respond to, so that we can assist that family in bereavement. Okay, I know we can do it. Let's do it together. And for those persons who have already indicated to me their contributions and willingness to contribute, thank you very much on behalf of the family. I hope by Monday or so, Monday, Tuesday latest, I will be able to hand over to them something that will help them in this cause, because I think they are hoping to have their dead buried by